In a town where silence was survival, one man dared to break the code, and it nearly cost him everything. Welcome to the untold story of Dusty Creek, where justice wore the face of violence and compassion was a death sentence. What you're about to hear is a tale of courage that defied an entire town's cowardice, of a marriage born not from love, but from desperation, and of two broken souls who built a fortress against a world determined to destroy them. If this story moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. Now, let me take you back. The dust never settled in Dusty Creek. It hung in the air like a permanent fog, coating everything. The false-fronted buildings, the hitching posts, the faces of people who'd learned long ago that seeing too much could get you killed. The town squatted at the edge of civilization, where Montana territory bled into wilderness, where law was a suggestion and violence was the dialect everyone spoke fluently. Cole Brennan rode into town on a Tuesday morning when the sun was still climbing, his dun mare picking her way carefully through the rutted main street. He was a man carved from hard seasons, tall, lean, with shoulders that had carried more weight than any 32-year-old should bear. His face was weathered bronze, marked by a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from a knife fight in Abilene that he'd barely survived. His eyes were the color of winter sky, pale and assessing, missing nothing. He'd come to Dusty Creek for supplies and anonymity, planning to stock up and disappear back into the mountains where he'd been running a small horse ranch for the past 2 years. After what happened in Kansas, after the blood and the screaming and the woman he couldn't save, Cole had made himself a promise. Never get involved, never look too close, never care. A man could survive anything if he just kept moving and kept his distance from other people's trouble. That promise lasted exactly 47 minutes. The general store sat on the north side of the street, its wooden sign creaking in the hot wind. Cole tied his mare to the rail and stepped onto the boardwalk, his spurs chiming softly. Through the dusty window, he could see the interior, shelves stocked with canned goods, sacks of flour and sugar, bolts of fabric. A woman stood at the counter, her back to the door. Even from behind, Cole could read the story written in her posture. She stood too carefully, weight shifted slightly to one side. Her left arm hung differently than her right, held closer to her body in a protective gesture that spoke of pain. The calico dress she wore was clean but worn, mended in several places with stitches that were neat despite their visibility. Her hair was dark, twisted into a bun at the base of her neck, and when she turned slightly to reach for something on the counter, Cole caught a glimpse of her profile. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 26, 27, with fine features that would have been striking if not for the exhaustion etched into every line. But it was the bruise that made Cole's jaw tighten. It bloomed across her left cheek like a storm cloud, purple and yellow and angry, recent enough that the swelling hadn't fully subsided. She moved with the careful deliberation of someone who knew sudden movements meant pain. Cole pushed through the door, and the bell overhead jangled. The woman's head snapped toward the sound, and for just an instant, Cole saw naked fear flash across her face before she locked it down, smoothing her expression into careful neutrality. That look, that instinctive flinch, told him more than any words could. "Help you, mister?" The storekeeper was a round man with a balding head and shrewd eyes. His gaze flickered between Cole and the woman, then away, dismissing whatever he'd seen. That dismissal was its own form of testimony. "Need supplies," Cole said, his voice rough from disuse. "Flour, salt, coffee, beans. Ammunition if you've got 4440. Got all that?" The storekeeper moved toward the shelves, leaving Cole and the woman in an awkward triangle of silence. She'd turned back to the counter, studying a piece of paper with intense concentration that was clearly manufactured. Her hands trembled slightly as she held it. Cole could see now that her right wrist was bandaged, the cloth stained with old blood. "Mrs. Calloway's order ready, Pete?" The voice came from behind Cole, and he turned to see two men pushing through the door. They were brothers. That much was obvious from the shared features. Broad, fleshy faces, small eyes set too close together, thick necks that spoke of physical labor and too much whiskey. The larger one, who'd spoken, wore a gun belt slung low on his hips, the leather worn smooth from frequent use. The smaller one, though smaller still meant over 200 pounds, had scarred knuckles and a mean twist to his mouth. The woman, Mrs. Calloway, went absolutely still. The fear that had flashed across her face when Cole entered now flooded back, turning her skin ashen beneath the bruise. "Just putting it together, Mr. Dalton," the storekeeper said quickly. Too quickly. His hands moved faster, grabbing items from the shelves with the urgency of a man trying to defuse a bomb. "No rush, Pete." The larger brother, Dalton, moved deeper into the store, his bulk making the space feel suddenly cramped, his eyes fixed on Mrs. Calloway with an attention that made Cole's skin crawl. "How you doing today, Sarah? Looking a bit peaked?" Sarah Calloway didn't answer. She kept her gaze on the counter, her breathing shallow. "My brother asked you a question," the smaller one said, moving to flank her. They positioned themselves on either side of her with the practiced coordination of wolves cutting a deer from the herd. "Ain't polite to ignore family." "I'm fine, Marcus. Thank you for asking." Her voice was barely above a whisper, carefully measured, each word chosen for maximum safety and minimum provocation. "Didn't sound fine last night when you were crying." Dalton leaned against the counter, too close to her, invading her space with casual dominance. "Kept the whole house awake with your caterwauling. Got Travis so worked up he had to go sleep in the barn." Cole's hands, reaching for a can of peaches on a nearby shelf, stopped moving. "Travis, another brother. How many were there?" "I apologize," Sarah said, and Cole could hear the mechanism of survival clicking in her words. "Say what they want to hear. Give them no excuse. Make yourself small." "I'll be quieter." "See that you do." Dalton picked up the piece of paper she'd been studying, and Sarah's hands clenched at her sides. "This the supply order? Pretty expensive, Sarah." "You sure you need all this? Seems to me a widow woman living on our charity shouldn't be so free with money that ain't hers." "It's for the house," Sarah said, her voice shaking now despite her efforts at control. "For cooking and—" "Our house," Marcus interrupted. "Our food, our roof over your head. Seems like you forget that sometimes. Seems like you forget you got no claim to nothing except what we decide to give you out of the goodness of our hearts." The storekeeper had stopped moving, his face carefully blank. Cole recognized that look, the practiced blindness of a man who'd decided long ago that survival meant seeing nothing, hearing nothing, knowing nothing. How many times had Pete witnessed scenes like this? How many times had he watched this woman be humiliated and hurt and done absolutely nothing? Cole set down the can of peaches with deliberate care. Every instinct he'd spent 2 years cultivating told him to walk away, to focus on his own supplies, to maintain the careful isolation that had kept him alive and sane. This wasn't his fight. This woman wasn't his responsibility. He'd learned in the hardest way possible that playing hero only got people killed. But then Sarah Calloway made a small sound, not quite a sob, not quite a gasp, and her hand came up to clutch her injured wrist, and Cole saw her face crumple for just an instant before she caught herself and rebuilt the mask. And just like that, Cole Brennan broke every promise he'd made to himself. "How much does she owe?" His voice cut through the store like a whip crack. All eyes turned to him. Dalton straightened, his hand dropping casually toward his gun. Marcus shifted his weight, squaring up. Sarah looked at Cole with an expression that mixed hope and terror in equal measure. "Sorry?" Dalton's tone was deceptively mild. "This some concern of yours, friend?" Asked a simple question. How much does she owe? The storekeeper cleared his throat. "Well, the Calloway account." $27.60, Dalton said, his eyes never leaving Cole's face. "But like I said, I don't see how that's your concern. This is family business." "She family of yours?" Cole knew the answer before he asked. He could see it in the way they looked at her, in the possessive cruelty of their attention. "She was married to our brother John before he died. That makes her family enough." "And the way I understand law and custom," Cole said, keeping his voice level and cold, "a widow's property goes to her unless the husband made other arrangements. So either she inherited what was her husband's, or she's free to leave. Either way, those supplies she's trying to buy are paid for by her own money, or she's got no obligation to stay in a house where she's not wanted." The silence that fell over the store was absolute. Even the dust motes seemed to freeze in their lazy spiraling. Pete's mouth had fallen open. Sarah's eyes were wide, disbelieving. And the Dalton brothers looked like men who'd just been slapped across the face in public. "You got a real big mouth for a stranger," Marcus said softly. "Real big." "John left her nothing," Dalton said, his words clipped and precise. Nothing but debts, which we were good enough to take on. The ranch was already ours. John was just working it. So every mouthful of food this woman eats, every roof over her head, every stitch of clothing, that comes from Dalton generosity. And we don't take kindly to outsiders telling us how to manage what's ours. Cole looked at Sarah. That true? He left you nothing? She opened her mouth, closed it. Confusion and fear warred across her face. John said, but after he died, they said, there was debts, Dalton snapped. More than you knew about, Sarah. More than the ranch could cover. We took them on. We kept you from ending up on the street or worse. You think any other man in this town would have done that? You think anyone else would have taken in a useless widow with no skills and no prospects? The casual cruelty of it stole breath from the room. Sarah's face went white, then red, and she looked down at her hands. Cole saw her shoulders shake once violently before she locked them into stillness. And something cold and familiar woke up in Cole's chest. He'd seen this before. Different town, different faces, but the same pattern. Strong men using their strength to crush someone weaker. People standing by because it was easier than getting involved. A woman trapped with no options and no allies. Last time, he'd acted too late. Last time, he'd arrived just in time to hold a dying woman and hear her whisper thank you with her last breath. Not again. How much for her order? Cole asked Pete. Sir, I really don't think... How much? Pete swallowed hard. $8.40. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. He counted out coins with steady hands and set them on the counter. $8.40 for her supplies. And I'll cover that $27.60 you said she owes on account. Like hell you will. Dalton's hand was definitely on his gun now, thumb hooked into his belt. You think you can just walk in here and... I think I can spend my money however I want, Cole said quietly, and I want to settle this lady's account. Unless you're saying Pete can't take my money, that seems like bad business. Pete looked like a man caught between a rock and a hard place. His eyes flickered to Dalton, to Cole, to the money on the counter. Cole could see him doing the math, weighing the potential anger of the Daltons against $36 in hard cash. Greed won. It usually did. Money's money, Pete said weakly, scooping up the coins. I'll get Mrs. Calloway's order together. You just made a real bad mistake, friend. Marcus's voice was soft, almost conversational. Real bad? Wouldn't be the first time. Cole met his gaze steadily. Ma'am, you want help carrying those supplies? Sarah looked at him like he was something from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at the Daltons, back at Cole, at the door like she was calculating how fast she could run. Sarah? Dalton's voice had gone flat, empty of everything except threat. You remember what we talked about? About loyalty. About what happens to women who forget where they belong. Sarah flinched as if he'd struck her. She don't need help, Marcus added. She's got us to look after her. Don't you, Sarah? This was the moment, Cole realized. This was where it got decided. He could push, could escalate, could try to force the issue. But force would only lead to gunplay. And gunplay in a crowded store meant innocent people getting hurt. He'd learned that lesson too, written in blood across a Kansas street. So instead, he just looked at Sarah and waited. She stood there, trembling, her damaged wrist clutched against her stomach. The bruise on her face seemed darker in the harsh sunlight streaming through the window. Her eyes met his. Hazel, he noticed now, flecked with gold. And he saw something shift in their depths. Not hope, exactly. Something more complicated. A kind of desperate calculation. Thank you, she whispered, so quietly he almost didn't hear it. Thank you for... but I can manage.
What?
It felt like defeat, but Cole recognized it for what it really was, survival. She was trapped in a cage, and he was a stranger offering a key she didn't dare take. Not yet. Not here. Not now. Not with her tormentors watching. You change your mind, Cole said, keeping his voice low and steady. I'll be at the hotel tonight. The Golden Sage. Rooms under Cole Brennan. Dalton laughed, an ugly sound. You hear that, Marcus? Man thinks he's some kind of knight in shining armor, gonna save the poor widow woman. Knights get themselves killed, Marcus said. especially ones who don't know when to mind their own goddamn business. Cole gathered his supplies, the ones Pete had hurriedly assembled while the confrontation unfolded, and moved toward the door. As he passed Sarah, he paused just long enough to say quietly, "Offer stands. Anytime." Then he was out in the harsh sunlight, his heart pounding harder than it had any right to. Behind him, he heard Dalton's voice, low and vicious. "You stupid woman. You think we won't remember this? You think there won't be consequences?" Cole's hands tightened on his supplies, every instinct screaming at him to go back, to finish what he'd started. But he forced himself to keep walking, to load his mare, to breathe through the rage that threatened to choke him. He'd done what he could. He'd made the offer. The rest was up to her. Except he knew, with sick certainty, that it wasn't that simple. Men like the Daltons didn't forget slights. They didn't let challenges go unanswered. He'd painted a target on his back the moment he opened his mouth. And more importantly, he'd painted a bigger target on Sarah Calloway's. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Cole found the hotel exactly where he expected. A 2-story building with peeling paint and a sign that optimistically called it the Golden Sage. The room was what frontier hotels always were. Small, spare, clean enough if you didn't look too close. A narrow bed, a washstand, a single chair. A window that looked out over the main street. He set his supplies down and moved to that window, looking out at the town below. Dusty Creek bustled with afternoon activity. Cowboys coming in from ranches, townspeople doing business, a dog barking at nothing in particular. It looked normal. It looked fine. But Cole had learned to see past surfaces. He watched the way people moved, the careful space they gave certain men, the way eyes turned away from specific buildings, the unspoken rules that governed every interaction. Dusty Creek was a town built on fear, maintained by violence, and sustained by collective cowardice. He'd seen towns like this before. Hell, he'd grown up in one. The only difference was that back then, he'd been too young to understand what he was seeing, too young to know that silence wasn't the same as peace. He was unpacking his saddlebags when he heard voices in the hallway. 2 men, talking low. Cole's hand moved to his gun automatically. Asking questions about the Daltons. "Man's got a death wish. You see what he did at Pete's store? Heard about it. Crazy bastard. They're gonna kill him. You know they are. Probably tonight. Not our problem. Man wants to play hero. He can deal with the consequences." The voices faded as the men moved down the hall. Cole stood very still, processing what he'd heard. So it was already moving. The Daltons weren't going to wait, weren't going to let this slide. They'd come for him, probably when the sun went down and there were fewer witnesses. Fine. Let them come. He'd dealt with men like that before. But what about Sarah? The thought came unbidden, unwanted. She wasn't his responsibility. He'd given her an out, done more than most men would. If she chose to stay with the Daltons, that was her decision. He couldn't save someone who didn't want to be saved. But she did want to be saved, a voice whispered in his head. You saw it in her eyes. She's just too scared, too broken, too trapped to reach for help. Cole turned away from the window and sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. This was exactly what he'd sworn to avoid, getting involved, caring about someone else's trouble. The last time he'd let himself care, he'd gotten a woman killed and carried the guilt of it for 2 years. Her name had been Emma. She'd been a soiled dove in a Kansas saloon, and she'd asked him for help getting away from her pimp. Cole had been young, stupid, full of righteousness. He'd confronted the man, threatened him, made all kinds of bold promises about what would happen if Emma was hurt. 2 days later, Emma was dead. Beaten to death in an alley, her last words a weak apology for the trouble she'd caused. Cole had killed the pimp, slowly, painfully, and then he'd left Kansas and sworn never to let himself care again because caring got people killed. But here he was, in another town, looking at another woman who needed help, and all those promises he'd made to himself felt hollow in the face of Sarah Calloway's bruised face and desperate eyes. "Damn it," he said to the empty room. The sun was setting when Cole heard the first sounds of trouble, shouting from somewhere down the street, the sharp crack of something breaking, a woman's scream abruptly cut off. He was at the window in an instant, looking out. A crowd had gathered in front of what looked like a boarding house. In the middle of that crowd were the Dalton brothers. All 3 of them now, the third one younger and even bigger than his siblings. And between them, being dragged by her arm, was Sarah Calloway. Even from a distance, Cole could see she'd been hit again. Fresh blood streamed from her nose, and she was limping badly. One of the brothers, the youngest, Travis, had her by the hair, pulling her head back at an angle that had to be agonizing. "Thought we should show the town what happens to whores who try to shame their family," Dalton's voice carried up to Cole's window. "Thought we should make an example." The crowd watched. Some looked uncomfortable, turning away. Others watched with the ugly fascination people always had for public violence. But none of them moved to help. None of them said a word. Cole was down the stairs and out the door before he'd made a conscious decision to move. His hand went to his gun, not drawing it, not yet, just making sure it was there. Ready. "Let her go." His voice cut through the evening air. The crowd turned as one. Cole saw recognition dawn on some faces, calculation on others. The Daltons turned to face him, and all three wore identical expressions of cruel satisfaction. "Well, well," Dalton said. "The hero returns. Come to save your whore, have you? Last chance, let her go." Travis yanked Sarah's head back harder, making her cry out. "Or what? You gonna draw on all three of us? You that good stranger?" Cole's eyes flicked to Sarah. Her face was a mess now, both eyes swelling, blood running down her chin, but her gaze locked with his, and he saw something there that made his chest tight. Not hope, not anymore. Just a kind of exhausted acceptance, a resignation to whatever came next. "Please," she whispered, "just go. They'll kill you." "Shut up," Marcus backhanded her casually, and her head snapped to the side. Cole's hand moved to his gun, but before he could draw, 6 more men stepped out from the shadows. Ranch hands, by the look of them. All armed, all clearly with the Daltons. "You're outnumbered, friend," Dalton said, his smile widening. "Way outnumbered. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around, get back in that hotel, pack your gear, and ride out of Dusty Creek. Tonight. And if you're smart, you'll never come back. And if I don't, then we kill you right here in the street, and Sarah pays for every second you made us wait. We've got all night, stranger. We can get real creative." It was a trap. A perfect one. Fight, and he'd die, and Sarah would suffer. Run, and she'd suffer anyway, probably worse. There was no winning move here, no clever solution, just brutal math and brutal choices. Cole looked at Sarah again, at her ruined face, her broken posture, the way she held herself like something already destroyed, and he made a decision that surprised even him. "I got a better idea," he said quietly. "I'll marry her." The silence that fell over the street was absolute. "What?" Dalton's face had gone blank with confusion. "You heard me. I'll marry her. Tonight. And then I'll take her out of here, and she won't be your problem anymore." "You're insane," Marcus said flatly. "Maybe. But I'm also offering you a way out. You kill me, you're going to have to answer for it. I'm not some helpless widow. I've got friends who'll come asking questions. But you let me marry her and leave, you get rid of your problem, and nobody has to die." "She's ours," Travis snarled. "Our brother's widow. She belongs to nobody," Cole cut him off. "She's a free woman. And if she agrees to marry me, there's nothing you can do about it legally. You'll just be the men who hurt and harassed a widow until she fled to another man for protection. How's that going to look?" He could see Dalton thinking, weighing options. The man was cruel, but not stupid. A killing in the street would bring questions, maybe even a federal marshal if someone made enough noise. But a widow remarrying? That was normal, expected even. "Sarah," Cole called out, not taking his eyes off the brothers. "You want to marry me?" The question hung in the air. Sarah stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Tears cut tracks through the blood on her face. Her voice broke. Why would you?" "Because right now, it's the only move that keeps us both alive. Yes or no, ma'am. But decide fast." She looked at the Daltons, at the crowd, at the town that had watched her suffer and done nothing. And then she looked back at Cole, this stranger who'd paid her debts and offered himself up as a shield, and something changed in her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Dalton's face went red, then purple. "This is bullshit. You can't just—" "I can and I am. Anyone here object to a legal marriage between 2 consenting adults?" Cole swept his gaze across the crowd. No one spoke up. Didn't think so. Travis let her go. Oh, like hell, let her go, or I draw. And maybe I don't get all of you, but I guarantee I get you first. Your choice. Travis's face worked through several emotions before he finally shoved Sarah forward. She stumbled and nearly fell, but Cole caught her, his arm going around her waist to steady her. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. This ain't over, Dalton said softly. You hear me? This ain't even close to over. I hear you just fine. Now back off and let me get my wife to a doctor. The word wife seemed to strike the brothers physically. Cole felt Sarah flinch against him. There ain't no preacher in Dusty Creek, Marcus said suddenly, triumphantly. So you can't get married. Not tonight. Not legally. Judge Carter is authorized to perform marriages, someone in the crowd called out. It was Pete, the storekeeper, and he looked as surprised as anyone that he'd spoken. He lives above the land office. I seen him marry folks before. Dalton shot Pete a look of pure venom, but the storekeeper had said it, and now it was out there. Cole filed away the man's unexpected assistance for later consideration. Then let's go see Judge Carter, Cole said. Right now, all of us. Make it nice and public so nobody can claim it wasn't legal. You're making a mistake, Dalton said, but there was something in his voice now, uncertainty maybe, or the beginning of doubt. You don't know what you're getting into. You don't know what she is. I know what she isn't, Cole said quietly. She isn't yours, not anymore. He turned, keeping Sarah close, and began walking toward the land office. Behind them, he could hear the Daltons arguing in low, furious voices. The crowd followed at a distance, drawn by the drama of it all. Sarah walked beside him in silence, her breathing uneven. When they were far enough from the Daltons that he thought it was safe to speak, Cole leaned close and whispered, You okay? No, she said simply. Nothing about this is okay. Fair enough. You can still change your mind. Say the word and I'll figure something else out. She looked up at him, and in the fading light, her bruised face looked older than it should. What else is there? You were right. This is the only move. At least this way you might live through the night. Worried about me, ma'am? Someone should be. You just put yourself between me and the Daltons. Nobody's survived that before. The land office was a small building with a faded sign. Cole knocked hard on the door, and after a moment, a querulous voice called out, Closed! Come back tomorrow. Judge Carter, it's important. I need you to perform a marriage. Footsteps. Then the door cracked open. An elderly man with wild white hair and suspicious eyes peered out. Marriage? At this hour? What's the rush? The rush is those men want to kill us, Sarah said, and her bluntness seemed to startle the judge into opening the door wider. Judge Carter took in Sarah's battered face, Cole's protective stance, and the crowd gathering in the street. His expression cycled through confusion, concern, and finally, weary resignation. The Daltons? He asked. Yes, sir. Figures. All right, come in. Make it quick. The ceremony was perhaps the least romantic thing Cole had ever witnessed. Judge Carter barely looked at them as he rattled through the words, his hands shaking slightly as he held the marriage certificate. Sarah stood rigid beside Cole, not touching him except where his hand held hers. And even that was more support than affection, keeping her upright as exhaustion and pain caught up with her. Do you, Cole Brennan, take this woman? The words washed over him. Cole was only dimly aware of responding, of Sarah's whispered, I do, beside him. He was more focused on the window, watching the shadows outside, tracking the movement of the Daltons and their men. Pronounce you man and wife. Kiss the bride if you're of a mind, though I won't blame you if you skip it given the circumstances. Cole looked down at Sarah. Her eyes were closed, tears sliding down her cheeks. He squeezed her hand gently. Don't have to if you don't want to. It's fine, she whispered. It's all fine. None of this is real anyway. He kissed her forehead instead, as light as a feather, and felt her sag against him. The judge pressed the certificate into his hands. If you're smart, Carter said quietly, you'll leave tonight. Don't wait for morning. The Daltons won't respect any piece of paper once they've had time to drink and work themselves up. That's the plan. Thank you, Judge. Don't thank me. Just survive. Hate to have married a widow just to make her one again. Cole got Sarah out of there and back to the hotel. The crowd had dispersed, but he could feel eyes watching from windows, from doorways, from the shadows. The whole town was holding its breath, waiting to see what happened next. In his room, their room now, technically, Sarah sank onto the bed and put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Cole gave her a moment, then knelt in front of her. "Hey, look at me." She shook her head, but he gently touched her chin, tilting her face up. In the lamplight, the damage was even worse than he'd thought. Both eyes nearly swollen shut, a cut on her lip still seeping blood, bruises layering on bruises in shades of purple and yellow and sick green. "We need to get you cleaned up, then we need to leave. Can you ride?" "I can do whatever I have to do." Her voice was flat, emptied of everything. "I've gotten good at that." Cole wet a cloth at the washstand and carefully cleaned her face. She flinched at first, then went very still, letting him work. When he was done, he could see more clearly just how bad it was. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have they been doing this?" "Since John died, 6 months." She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Why did you do this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." "Didn't seem right, letting them hurt you." "Lots of things aren't right. Most people don't nearly get themselves killed over it." Cole sat back on his heels. "Maybe I'm not most people." "No," she said softly, studying his face. "I don't think you are. Are you really going to take me away from here?" That was the deal. "And then what? You're stuck with a wife you didn't want. I'm stuck with a husband I don't know. What kind of life is that?" "Better than the one you had this morning." She laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. "That's a low bar, Mr. Brennan." "Cole. If we're married, might as well use my name." "Cole." She tested it, rolled it around in her mouth. "And I'm Sarah." "But you knew that already." "Yeah, I knew that." They sat in silence for a long moment, two strangers who'd bound their lives together with a desperate gamble. Outside, the town continued its evening rhythms, but Cole knew it was a false calm. The storm was coming. "We should go," he said finally. "Pack whatever you have. We'll get your things from the Daltons' place if we can, but if not, I don't have anything worth going back for. Everything I owned, they took or destroyed. All I have is this dress and nothing else." The casualness with which she said it, the acceptance of having been stripped of everything, made Cole's jaw tighten. "Then we'll get you new things, on the road, in the next town, whatever you need." "I don't need much, never have." "Sarah." He waited until she looked at him. "I'm not them. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to control you. This is temporary, if you want it to be. Once we're far enough away, once you're safe, you can go wherever you want. Do whatever you want. You understand?" She stared at him for a long moment. "No," she said finally. "I don't understand you at all, but thank you. For whatever this is, thank you." They gathered what little they had, Cole's supplies, his weapons, the few coins he had left. Sarah had nothing to pack. She stood by the door, hugging herself, while Cole did a final check of the room. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." They made it to the stable without incident. Cole saddled his mare and acquired a second horse, a sturdy bay gelding that looked like it could handle long miles. The stable hand took Cole's money with shaking hands, his eyes darting toward the street. "They're out there," the man whispered. "The Daltons, waiting." "How many?" "All of them, and maybe 6, 7 others. You ain't gonna make it out, mister, not both of you." Cole helped Sarah onto the bay, adjusting the stirrups for her shorter legs. "We'll see about that." They rode out of the stable into the lamp-lit street, and there, exactly as promised, were the Daltons. All 3 brothers stood in the middle of the road, flanked by armed men. Dalton stepped forward as Cole and Sarah approached. "Last chance," he called out. "Leave the woman. Ride out. We'll let you live." "Can't do that." "Then you'll die. Both of you." Cole's hand moved to his gun, but before he could draw, a voice rang out from a nearby building. "Any man fires a shot, I'll kill him where he stands." All eyes turned. Standing on the roof of the general store, silhouetted against the night sky, was Pete the storekeeper. He held a rifle, and it was pointed directly at Dalton. "Pete?" Dalton's voice was incredulous. What the hell do you think you're doing? Something I should have done years ago. Standing up. Mr. Brennan and his wife are leaving town. You're gonna let them. The hell we are. Get down from there before what? Before you kill me too? Fine. But I'll take you with me, and I ain't alone. Other figures appeared on rooftops, in windows. A woman Cole recognized as the seamstress, the bartender from the saloon, the blacksmith, a dozen townspeople, maybe more, all armed, all aiming at the Daltons. It wasn't everyone. Most of Dusty Creek was still hiding, still afraid. But it was enough. It was something. Dalton's face went through a series of colors, ending on a purple so dark it was almost black. You're all making a mistake. You're all going to pay for this. Maybe, Pete said, but not tonight. Tonight, these folks are leaving, and you're letting them. The standoff held for what felt like an eternity. Cole could feel Sarah trembling beside him, could hear her shallow breathing. His hand stayed on his gun, ready for whatever came next. Finally, with visible effort, Dalton stepped aside. Go on then. Run. But you remember something, Brennan. You remember that you made enemies tonight, and enemies have long memories. So do friends, Pete called down. So do folks who are tired of being scared. Cole didn't waste time responding. He spurred his mare forward, and Sarah followed. They rode through the gauntlet of Dalton men, Cole's back itching with the expectation of a bullet. But the shots never came. They were almost to the edge of town when Sarah spoke, her voice barely audible over the horses' hooves. They'll come after us. You know that, don't you? They'll never stop. I know, Cole said. And you did this anyway. Yeah. Why? Cole thought about Kansas, about Emma, about all the times he'd walked away, kept his distance, protected himself by protecting no one, about the weight of guilt and the price of indifference. Because I'm tired of being the kind of man who doesn't, he said finally. They rode into the darkness, leaving Dusty Creek behind. And as the town lights faded into the distance, Cole felt something shift in his chest. Not hope, exactly, but something close to it. Something that felt almost like purpose. The night was long and full of shadows. They had miles to go before dawn, before safety, before anything resembling peace. But for the first time in 2 years, Cole Brennan wasn't running away from something. He was running toward something instead. And beside him, battered but free, Sarah Calloway, Sarah Brennan now, legally if not yet in truth, rode into an uncertain future that was still infinitely better than the certain hell she was leaving behind. The first chapter of their story had been written in violence and desperation. But the next chapter? That one, they would write together. However it turned out. The moon was a sliver of bone in the black sky when they finally stopped to rest. Cole had pushed them hard for the first 3 hours, taking paths he knew would be difficult to track in darkness, following creek beds and rocky ground that wouldn't hold hoofprints. Sarah had kept pace without complaint, though he could see the exhaustion pulling at her like a physical weight. They made camp in a small canyon, sheltered by rocks on 3 sides. No fire. Too risky with the Daltons potentially on their trail. Cole unsaddled the horses and rubbed them down while Sarah sank to the ground and simply sat there, staring at nothing. When he was done with the horses, Cole spread out his bedroll and brought Sarah a canteen. She drank mechanically, her hand shaking so badly water spilled down her chin. He took the canteen back and knelt beside her. You should lie down. Get some rest. I can't sleep. Her voice was hollow. Every time I close my eyes, I see them, feel them. Cole understood that. He'd spent months after Kansas unable to sleep without seeing Emma's broken body. It gets easier, he lied. Does it? She looked at him with those haunted hazel eyes. Or do you just get better at pretending? Maybe both. She laughed bitterly and pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. In the moonlight, the bruises on her face looked like shadows, dark continents mapped across pale skin. She was shivering despite the warm night. Cole shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at the contact, then relaxed by slow degrees. Thank you, she whispered. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. She pulled the jacket tighter. What happens now? Where are we going? I've got a ranch, about 4 days' hard ride north of here. Small place, but it's mine. We'll be safe there. Safe? She tested the word like it was foreign. I don't remember what that feels like. You will. Give it time. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the stars overhead. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully neutral. You said this was temporary, that I could leave once we were far enough away. That's right. When you said that, did you mean it? Or were you just trying to keep me calm? Cole settled onto the ground beside her, keeping a respectful distance. I meant it. I'm not holding you prisoner, Sarah. Soon as you want to go your own way, you can. I'll stake you enough money to start fresh somewhere. You have my word. Your word? She smiled sadly. A stranger's word. That's all I have now. Everything else is gone. Tell me about it. About them. She shook her head. You don't want to hear? I do. If the Daltons are coming after us, and they will, I need to know what I'm dealing with. How many brothers? What kind of men are they? Sarah drew a shaky breath. 3 brothers. You met them all. Clayton is the oldest. He's the one who does most of the talking, smart in a mean way. Marcus is the middle one. He's the violent one, the one who likes hurting people. And Travis is the youngest, but he's the biggest. He mostly does what his brothers tell him, but he's got a temper that makes him dangerous. And your husband, John? Her face went very still. John he was the 4th brother, the different one. He was kind when we married, gentle. I thought I was lucky. She laughed without humor. Shows what I knew. What happened? He changed, or maybe he was always like his brothers and just hit it better at first. After the wedding, he started drinking more, getting angry over nothing. The first time he hit me, he cried after, swore it would never happen again. She touched her face unconsciously, fingers tracing the outline of old pain. It always happened again. Cole's hands clenched into fists. He'd heard variations of this story before, but it never got easier. Then one night, John went out drinking with his brothers, got thrown from his horse on the way home, broke his neck, and suddenly I was alone in a house with 3 men who blamed me for their brother's death. They said I drove him to drink, said I was a curse on the Dalton family. I know it's not true, but truth doesn't matter when men want an excuse to hurt someone. Sarah's voice hardened. They took everything. The few dollars John left, the wedding ring my mother gave me, even my clothes, gave me one dress and told me I'd wear it until I earned another, and they made me work. Cooking, cleaning, doing everything while they sat around drinking and deciding new ways to make me suffer. Why didn't you run? Where would I go? I have no family, no money. And they made it very clear that if I tried to leave, they'd find me. They'd make what they were doing to me look like kindness compared to what would happen if I ran. She looked at Cole. You have to understand they own half the county. The sheriff is Clayton's cousin. The judge who married us tonight? He's the only official in town the Daltons don't control. Everyone else either works for them or is too scared to cross them. How'd they get that much power? The usual way. Violence and money. Their father built the ranch up before he died, made it one of the biggest spreads in Montana territory. When he passed, the brothers inherited everything, and they used it, bought people, threatened people, killed the ones who wouldn't bend. She paused. There was a newspaper editor who tried to write about them. They burned down his office with him inside, called it an accident. No one questioned it. Cole absorbed this information, his mind already working through the implications. The Daltons weren't just cruel men, they were powerful, cruel men. That made them infinitely more dangerous. That storekeeper, he said. Pete, why did he help us? Sarah's expression softened slightly. Pete's daughter, Jenny. She was my friend before I married John. After John died, she tried to help me. Brought me food sometimes, medicine when the Daltons hurt me bad enough that I couldn't work. But Clayton found out. He told Pete that if Jenny came near me again, he'd make sure she ended up like me. Pete had to choose between his daughter and me. Until tonight, Sarah shook her head wonderingly. I never thought I'd see anyone in Dusty Creek stand up to them, let alone Pete. Fear only lasts until someone shows it can be broken. Pete just needed someone to go first. You went first, and now they'll kill you for it. They'll try. Cole stretched out his legs, feeling the ache of hard riding in his muscles. Been tried before. Sarah studied him in the darkness, her gaze tracing the scar on his face, the hard set of his shoulders, the way his hand never strayed far from his gun. Who are you really, Cole Brennan? What kind of man marries a stranger to save her from monsters? The kind who didn't do it soon enough once before. The words came out before he could stop them. Sarah went very still. What do you mean? Cole closed his eyes. He'd carried this story for 2 years, told no one, buried it so deep he could almost pretend it never happened. But something about the darkness, about this woman who'd survived her own hell, made him want to speak it aloud. Kansas, 2 years back. I was working as a ranch hand, saving money to buy my own place. There was a woman, Emma. She worked at the saloon, not a dove by choice, if you understand my meaning. Her pimp was a mean son of a bitch named Garrett Cole. Sarah's breath caught. Cole? Yeah, when I killed him, I took his name. Seemed fitting. A way to remember what happens when I don't act fast enough. Tell me what happened. So he did. Cole told her about Emma, about her desperate request for help, about his arrogant certainty that threatening Garrett would be enough. About finding Emma 2 days later in an alley, beaten so badly he didn't recognize her at first. About how she'd looked at him with dying eyes and whispered thank you, as if he'd done something worth thanking him for, when all he'd done was get her killed. I hunted Garrett down that night, Cole said quietly. Took me 3 hours to find him in a card game above a brothel. I beat him with my fists until my knuckles broke, and then I kept beating him. When he couldn't stand anymore, I used my knife. Took my time. Made sure he felt every second of dying. Did it help? Did it make you feel better? No. Emma was still dead, and I still had to live with knowing I could have saved her if I'd acted different. If I'd gotten her out of town immediately, instead of trying to scare him. If I'd moved faster, thought smarter, been better. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. So you've been running ever since? Built a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Told myself I'd never get involved again. Never care about anyone's trouble but my own. He laughed bitterly. Lasted 2 years. Then I saw you in that store and it was like seeing Emma all over again. And I couldn't just walk away. Not again. So I'm your redemption? Sarah's voice held an edge now. Your second chance to save the helpless woman? No. Cole opened his eyes and looked at her directly. You're nothing like Emma. She was broken by what was done to her. Couldn't see a way out. But you? You're still fighting. You're still alive. You didn't need me to save you. You needed someone to give you room to save yourself. Sarah stared at him, and something in her face cracked. A tear slid down her cheek, then another. I'm not strong. You think I'm strong, but I'm not. I survived because I didn't have the courage to stop surviving. Every morning I woke up and hated myself for not being brave enough to end it. That's not weakness. That's the opposite of weakness. You don't understand. I do. Cole leaned forward, his voice intense. You think Emma was weak? She wasn't. She survived years of abuse that would have killed most people. Her mistake wasn't being weak. It was trusting that I could fix things with threats and swagger. You were smart enough not to trust me immediately. Smart enough to wait until you had no other options. That's not weakness, Sarah. That's survival. She broke then, truly broke, her body folding in on itself as sobs tore through her. Cole moved closer and carefully, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, put his arm around her shoulders. She turned into his chest and cried like the world was ending, her hands fisting in his shirt. Cole held her and said nothing. What was there to say? Sorry wouldn't fix anything. Promises wouldn't erase 6 months of torture. So he just held her and let her break apart. Let her release the poison that had been building inside her since John Dalton first raised his hand in anger. When the sobs finally subsided, Sarah pulled back, wiping her face with shaking hands. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. You've earned the right to cry. I've cried enough. For months, that's all I did. She straightened her spine, visibly pulling herself together. I'm done crying, done being weak. Then what do you want to be? Sarah looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. I want to be someone they can't hurt anymore. I want to be strong enough that no man ever makes me feel like that again. All right, then that's what we'll work on. Just like that, just like that. She almost smiled. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. You decide who you want to be, and then you do the work to become it. And if I can't, if I'm too broken, you're not broken. You're bent. There's a difference. Sarah studied his face in the moonlight, searching for something. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded slowly. Thank you, Cole, for all of this. For if you thank me one more time, I'm going to regret this whole thing, Cole said lightly, trying to ease the heaviness of the moment. This time she did smile. Small, tentative, but real. What should I say instead? Nothing, just rest. We've got a long ride tomorrow. Sarah lay down on the bedroll, pulling his jacket over her like a blanket. Cole moved to the edge of their camp, positioning himself where he could watch the approaches. He didn't expect the Daltons tonight. They'd need time to gather men and supplies for a pursuit, but expecting and preparing were different things. Cole? Sarah's voice drifted from the darkness. Yeah? I'm glad it was you, in the store. I'm glad it was you who saw me. Cole didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Behind him, he heard Sarah's breathing slow and deepen as exhaustion finally claimed her. He kept watch through the night, his rifle across his knees, his thoughts a tangled mess of past and present, guilt and determination. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Somewhere in the darkness, predators hunted and prey ran, and the eternal dance of survival played out in blood and struggle. Cole Brennan understood that dance intimately. He'd been both predator and prey at different times, had worn the skin of hunter and hunted until he couldn't always tell which was which. But tonight, watching over the sleeping form of his accidental wife, Cole felt something shift inside him, a settling of purpose, a clarification of intent. He'd spent 2 years trying to outrun his failure with Emma, trying to bury his guilt under isolation and distance. But guilt, he was learning, wasn't something you could outrun. It just followed you, waiting for the moment you stopped moving to catch up. Maybe the answer wasn't running. Maybe it was standing still and facing what came. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about doing better in the present. Dawn came gradually, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Sarah woke with a start, her hand flying to her face as if expecting to find herself back in the Daltons' house. When she saw Cole watching her, saw the canyon walls around them, she sagged with relief. It wasn't a dream, she said. No, ma'am. Still real. She sat up slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. Her face looked worse in daylight. The bruises had darkened overnight, and both eyes were swollen to slits. But there was something different in her expression now, something harder than yesterday's despair. How far did we come? Maybe 20 miles. We'll do 30 today if the horses hold up. And then? Then we keep going until we reach my place. 4 days, like I said. Maybe 3 if we push hard and don't run into trouble. Sarah accepted a piece of jerky from Cole's supplies and chewed mechanically. You keep saying if we don't run into trouble. You think the Daltons are already following? Clayton's smart. He'll figure out which direction we went, and he won't give up easy. But he'll also need to put together a hunting party, and that takes time. We've got maybe a day's head start. 2 if we're lucky. We're not lucky. No, Cole agreed. We're not. They broke camp quickly, covering their tracks as best they could. The horses were rested and ready, and they made good time through the morning. Cole kept them moving through rough country, avoiding main trails and settlements. The fewer people who saw them, the fewer who could report their direction to the Daltons. Around midday, they stopped at a creek to water the horses. Sarah knelt by the bank and splashed her face, hissing at the pain of cold water on bruised flesh. Cole watched her from the corner of his eye, noting the way she moved, careful, measured, conserving energy. She was learning fast, adapting to the demands of hard travel. Can I ask you something? Sarah said, not looking at him. Sure. That ranch of yours, you said it's small. Do you run it alone? I've got 2 hands, Diego and his son, Miguel. Good men. Known them since I bought the place. How will they feel about you bringing home a wife? Especially one who looks like this. She gestured at her battered face. Cole considered the question. Diego was in his 50s, a former vaquero who taught Cole more about horses and land than any book could. Miguel was 20, quiet and observant, with his father's skill with horses and a gift for reading weather. Both men valued loyalty and hard work, and both had their own reasons for living far from civilization. They'll ask questions, Cole said honestly, but they'll accept you, and they'll help protect you if it comes to that. If? You mean when? Yeah, when. Sarah stood and walked back to her horse, moving with visible effort. Cole noticed her favoring her left leg, the one Travis had kicked in Dusty Creek. He made a mental note to check it tonight, see if it needed wrapping. They rode in silence for several hours, the landscape changing as they moved north. The scrubland gave way to rolling hills, then to forests of pine and aspen. The air grew cooler, cleaner, carrying the scent of green things and mountain water. This was Cole's country, the land he knew and loved, where a man could disappear if he wanted to. Late afternoon found them following a narrow game trail through dense timber. Cole was navigating by memory and instinct, heading for a spot where he knew they could camp with good cover and water. He was so focused on the trail that he almost missed the sound. Almost. Cole's hand went up, signaling Sarah to stop. She froze immediately, proving she'd been paying attention. Cole tilted his head, listening. There. Again. The faint sound of horses moving through brush, maybe a quarter-mile behind them and to the east. Could be anyone. Hunters, prospectors, drifters. Could be nothing. But Cole hadn't survived this long by assuming the best. He turned to Sarah and put a finger to his lips. She nodded, understanding. He dismounted and moved back down the trail, using the trees for cover, his rifle ready. Sarah stayed where she was, her hand on her horse's neck, keeping it quiet. Cole moved like smoke through the forest, his feet finding soft ground by instinct. He circled wide, approaching the source of the sound from downwind. Through the trees he caught glimpses of movement. Horses. 3 of them. And riders dressed in range clothes, rifles across their saddles. One of the men dismounted and examined the ground, pointing at something. Tracking. They were tracking. Cole eased back the way he'd come, his heart hammering. Too soon. It was too damn soon for the Daltons to have caught up. Unless Clayton had sent outriders ahead while the main party assembled. It made sense. Send fast riders to scout the likely routes, find the trail, report back. Smart, dangerous. He returned to Sarah and remounted quickly. We need to move. Now. The Daltons? Scouts, I think. 3 men tracking us. Sarah's face went white, but she didn't panic. How close? Close enough. Come on. Cole led them off the trail, plunging deeper into the forest where the trees grew thick and the undergrowth made for hard going. The horses struggled through the brush, making noise that set Cole's teeth on edge, but there was no help for it. Speed mattered more than stealth now. They pushed hard for an hour, then 2. The sun was sinking toward the horizon when Cole finally called a halt in a small clearing surrounded by massive pines. Both horses were lathered and blowing hard. Sarah looked ready to fall from the saddle. We can't keep this pace, she said, her voice tight with pain. The horses won't last. I know. But we need distance. If those scouts find our trail and report back, then the Daltons will come with everything they have. I know. Sarah slid from her horse and nearly collapsed. Cole caught her, and she leaned against him briefly before forcing herself to stand on her own. Sorry. My leg. Cole helped her to a fallen log and carefully pushed up her skirt enough to see her left calf. The bruising was extensive, spreading from her knee to her ankle in shades of purple and black. When he pressed gently, Sarah gasped. Might be cracked, Cole said grimly. The bone. At minimum, it's badly bruised. It doesn't matter. I can ride. Sarah? It doesn't matter. Her voice was steel. If I slow us down, they'll catch us. And if they catch us, everything you did, everything we risked, was for nothing. So it doesn't matter how much it hurts. I'll ride until I can't anymore, and then I'll ride some more. Cole looked at her. This woman who'd been beaten and broken and brutalized, now sitting on a log in the middle of nowhere with a leg that might be fractured, telling him with absolute certainty that she would keep going no matter what. And he felt something in his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. All right, he said quietly, but we wrap it. And tonight, you rest it proper. He used strips torn from his spare shirt to bind her leg, wrapping it tight to provide support. Sarah watched him work, her jaw clenched against the pain. You're good at this, she observed, taking care of injuries. Had practice. Ranch work is dangerous work. Is that how you got that scar? She gestured at his face. This? No. This was from a man who thought I cheated at cards. Did you? Cole smiled slightly. Yeah, but he couldn't prove it. So you're not just a hero, you're a cheater too. Never claimed to be a hero, just a man trying to get by. Sarah's expression softened. You keep saying that,
But heroes never think they're heroes. That's what makes them heroes. In my experience, heroes get people killed. Or they save people. Depends on how the story ends.
But Cole finished wrapping her leg and sat back. Story's not over yet. No, Sarah agreed. It's not. They made a cold camp again. No fire, no hot food. Cole rationed out what supplies they had while Sarah rested her leg. As darkness fell, Cole could hear Sarah's breathing grow ragged with suppressed pain. He'd seen men with injuries like hers, knew what it cost her to stay silent. You don't have to be tough all the time, he said into the darkness. Not with me. Yes, I do. Her voice was small. If I let myself be weak, even for a moment, I'll fall apart. And I can't fall apart. Not yet. Not until we're safe. And when we're safe? Then maybe I'll let myself feel everything I've been holding back. Maybe I'll cry and scream and break things until all this poison is out of me. She paused. Or maybe I'll just sleep. I'm so tired, Cole, so tired of being scared and hurt and small. You're not small. You never were. They just tried to make you believe it. They succeeded. For a while. But not anymore. No, Sarah said. They dead. And there was something fierce in her voice now. Not anymore. They talked through the night in quiet voices, sharing stories, learning each other. Sarah told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about parents who died in a cholera outbreak when she was 17, about following a friend Wes looking for something better and finding John Dalton instead. Cole told her about growing up on a hardscrabble farm in Texas, about a father who drank and a mother who prayed and siblings scattered to the winds by poverty and violence. We're both orphans, Sarah observed, both alone. We're alone, Cole corrected. Don't know what we are now. Married. She laughed softly. Isn't that strange? 2 days ago, I'd never heard your name. Now I'm your wife. Wife in name only. Remember what I said. You're free to leave whenever you want. I know, but... She trailed off. But what? But what if I don't want to leave? What if I want to see where this goes? Cole's heart did something complicated in his chest. Sarah, I'm not saying I want a real marriage. I'm not saying I'm ready for anything like that. But maybe I don't want to be alone anymore either. Maybe we could be friends, partners, people who help each other survive. I'd like that, Cole said honestly. I'd like that a lot. Then that's what we'll be. Partners in survival. Partners in survival, Cole echoed, and for the first time since Emma died, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he was doing something right. Morning came too soon. They were both exhausted, having traded off keeping watch through the night. Cole helped Sarah onto her horse, noting the way she bit her lip against the pain but didn't cry out. They rode north again, pushing hard, but not so hard they'd break the horses. Around midday, they crested a ridge and Cole stopped, staring at the valley below. Sarah pulled up beside him. What's wrong? Nothing. That's the problem. Cole pointed to the valley. See that creek? We're going to follow it northwest for about 10 miles. Then we cut east through a canyon I know. After that, we're on my land. 1 more day. 1 more day, Sarah repeated. She looked at Cole. Do you think we'll make it? Honestly? Cole considered lying, offering false comfort, but Sarah deserved better than that. I think we've got a chance, a good one, but the Daltons aren't going to stop, and they're not going to give up. Even if we make it to my ranch, we're going to have to make a stand eventually. I know, I've been thinking about that. Sarah straightened in her saddle, and despite her bruises and pain, there was determination in her face. Teach me. Teach you what? To shoot, to fight, to defend myself. I never want to feel helpless again. Cole studied her for a long moment. It's not as easy as it looks, and it's not as clean. I don't care. I need to know I can protect myself, that if they come, I'm not just going to be the helpless victim waiting to be rescued. Her voice dropped. I'm done being rescued, Cole. I want to be someone who fights back. All right. When we get to the ranch, I'll teach you. Whatever you want to learn. Promise? Promise. They descended into the valley and followed the creek through the afternoon. The water ran clear and cold, fed by mountain snowmelt. Cole caught fish with his hands while Sarah watched in amazement, and they ate them raw because fire was still too risky. It wasn't much, But it was food, and food was strength. By evening, they'd made it to the canyon Cole mentioned. It was narrow and twisting, the walls rising steep on either side. Dangerous ground if someone was waiting to ambush them, but it cut hours off their journey. "Stay close," Cole warned as they entered. "Keep your eyes on the rim." They moved through the canyon slowly, both of them tense and watchful. The walls threw back the sound of the horses' hooves in strange echoes. Cole's hand never left his rifle. They were halfway through when Cole heard it, the distinct sound of a rifle bolt being worked. He threw himself sideways, shouting, "Down!" as the shot rang out. The bullet cracked past where his head had been a second before. Sarah's horse screamed and reared, nearly throwing her. Cole fought his mare under control and looked up at the canyon rim. 3 men. The scouts he'd spotted yesterday. They'd gotten ahead somehow, laid a trap, and now Sarah and he were caught in the bottom of a canyon with shooters above them. "Ride!" Cole shouted, firing at the rim to drive the shooters into cover. "Go!" Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She kicked her horse forward, and the animal bolted down the canyon. Cole followed, firing over his shoulder. Bullets sparked off rock around them. His mare stumbled, recovered, ran harder. The canyon curved sharply, providing momentary cover. Cole used the respite to reload, his hands moving with practiced speed. Sarah was ahead of him, leaning low over her horse's neck, her hair streaming behind her. They emerged from this canyon into open ground, and Cole's heart sank. Waiting at the mouth of the canyon were 4 more riders. Not the scouts. These were different men, bigger, meaner, wearing gun belts that spoke of experience. And leading them was Marcus Dalton. "Well, well," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "End of the line, hero." Cole pulled his mare to a sliding stop, Sarah beside him. Behind them, the 3 scouts were emerging from the canyon, cutting off retreat. They were surrounded, outnumbered 7-2, with Sarah injured and both horses exhausted. It was over. Except Cole Brennan hadn't survived 32 years of hard living by giving up easy. His mind raced, calculating distances, angles, possibilities. Could he draw fast enough to take Marcus? Maybe. But then the others would kill him and take Sarah. Unacceptable. "Let her go," Cole called out. "This is between you and me." Marcus laughed. "This stopped being between anything the second you stuck your nose in our business. Now it's about teaching lessons, about showing what happens to people who defy the Daltons." "Cole." Sarah's voice was low, urgent. "Don't do anything stupid." Little late for that advice. Cole's hand drifted toward his gun. "I mean it. I'm not worth dying for." "That's not your decision to make." Marcus was urging his horse forward, his men following. "I'm going to enjoy this. Been a long time since we had a proper killing. And after, we're going to take that whore wife of yours back to Dusty Creek and show her what real punishment looks like. We're going to make what we did before seem like kindness." Cole felt Sarah flinch beside him, felt her fear. And something inside him, something that had been cold and controlled for 2 years, finally broke loose. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Right away. Now." "Or what?" Marcus sneered. "Or I kill all of you." Marcus threw his head back and laughed. His men joined in, their mirth echoing across the empty land. They thought he was bluffing. They thought he was just another cowboy with a big mouth and small skills. They thought wrong. Cole's hand moved faster than thought. His pistol cleared leather and spoke once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. The first shot took Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him in the saddle. The second took the rider to his left in the chest. The third shattered the gun hand of the man to his right. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted like thunder in the canyon mouth. Cole threw himself sideways off his horse, pulling Sarah down with him as bullets screamed through the air where they'd been sitting. They hit the ground hard, Cole rolling to cover Sarah's body with his own as lead kicked up dirt around them. The horses bolted, taking their supplies with them. Cole cursed and returned fire, his pistol barking in his hand. One of the scouts from the canyon rim jerked and fell, tumbling down the rocky slope in a cloud of dust. The others scattered for cover, their shots going wild. Marcus was down but not out, clutching his bleeding shoulder and screaming orders. "Kill him! Kill them both!" Cole counted bullets in his head, 4 left in the cylinder. Behind them was the canyon, a death trap. Ahead were 5 armed men spread across open ground. The tactical situation was about as bad as it could get. "Can you run?" Cole asked Sarah, his voice urgent. "I can do whatever I have to." Her face was pale but determined. "Then when I say go, you run for those rocks to the east. Don't look back. Don't stop. Understand?" "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." She looked at him with eyes that said she didn't believe him, but she nodded anyway. Cole reloaded with fumbling fingers, his hands shaking with adrenaline. Around them, the shooting had paused as the Dalton men repositioned, trying to get better angles. "Now!" Cole roared, firing toward the closest shooters to force their heads down. Sarah ran. Despite her injured leg, she moved fast, limping and stumbling but never stopping. Cole backed toward the rocks, firing methodically, making each shot count. A Dalton man rose from cover and Cole put a bullet through his throat. The man went down gurgling. Return fire intensified. Something hot and angry scored across Cole's ribs, spinning him half around. He kept his feet and kept firing. 3 bullets left. 2. 1. He reached the rocks where Sarah had taken cover, diving behind them as a volley of shots chipped stone and sent fragments spinning through the air. Sarah grabbed his arm, her fingers digging in. "You're hit!" Cole looked down. Blood was spreading across his shirt from the furrow along his ribs. It burned like fire but didn't feel deep. "Just a graze. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're bleeding." "Later. Right now we need to move." Cole reloaded again, his eyes scanning their surroundings. The rocks provided decent cover but no escape route. Behind them was open ground for 200 yards before reaching the tree line. They'd be exposed the whole way. Marcus's voice carried across the killing ground. "You're trapped, Brennan. Nowhere to run. Throw out your guns and maybe I let your wife live a few more hours." Cole said nothing, his mind racing through options. They could try to hold the position, but eventually the Dalton men would flank them or wait them out. They could run for the trees, but Sarah was hurt and they'd be cut down before making it halfway. They could surrender and buy time, but Cole had seen what men like Marcus did to people who defied them. There would be no mercy, no quick end, which left fighting, and dying most likely, but at least dying on their feet. "I'm sorry," Cole said to Sarah. "I got you into this. Should have been smarter, faster." "Stop." Sarah's hand covered his. "You gave me 3 days of freedom, 3 days of not being afraid every second. That's more than I had any right to expect." 3 days isn't enough." "No, but it's something." She smiled, and even with her bruised face and the fear in her eyes, it was genuine. "Thank you for trying." Cole was about to respond when a new sound cut through the tense silence. The thunder of hooves, lots of them, coming fast from the north. Everyone froze, weapons trained on the approaching riders. A dozen men burst into view, spread out in a line, rifles ready. Leading them was a lean Mexican man with silver streaking his black hair and a weathered face that had seen 60 hard years. Diego, and beside him, his son Miguel, barely 20 but already carrying himself like a man born to the saddle. "Looks like we got here just in time, patron," Diego called out, his voice carrying authority and no small amount of amusement. "This a private fight, or can anyone join?" Cole felt something loosen in his chest. "About time you showed up, old man." The Dalton men had turned to face this new threat, suddenly realizing they were the ones trapped between two forces. Marcus struggled to his horse, his face twisted with pain and rage. "This ain't your fight," he shouted at Diego. "Any fight involving my boss is my fight, amigo." Diego levered around into his rifle. "And I think you boys should leave, now, while you still can." "We ain't leaving without—" A shot cracked out, and dirt exploded at Marcus's horse's feet. The animal reared, nearly throwing its injured rider. Miguel lowered his smoking rifle. "My father said leave," the young man said quietly. "You should listen." For a long moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then one of the Dalton men wheeled his horse and spurred away. Another followed. Then the rest, including the scouts from the canyon. Marcus was the last to go, his face promising violence and vengeance. "This ain't over, Brennan," he screamed. "We'll come back with an army, you hear me? An army!" Then he was gone, the hoofbeats fading into the distance. Diego and his men held position until the sounds disappeared entirely, then approached at a walk. Diego swung down from his horse and gripped Cole's arm in the Mexican fashion. "You look like hell, Jefe." "Feel worse?" Cole gestured to Sarah. "Diego, Miguel, this is Sarah. My wife. Diego's eyebrows rose, but his face showed nothing but courtesy as he swept off his hat and bowed slightly. Senora Brennan, it is an honor. Miguel nodded respectfully, his eyes taking in Sarah's injuries with the careful blankness of a man trying not to stare. The other riders, ranch hands Cole recognized from neighboring spreads, kept their distance but offered nods of greeting. How'd you know where to find us? Cole asked. We didn't. We were hunting strays near the north boundary when we heard the shooting. Figured anyone shooting that much had to be you getting into trouble. Diego's smile faded as he took in Cole's bloody shirt. Let me look at that. It's nothing. It's bleeding. That makes it something. Sit. Cole knew better than to argue with Diego when he used that tone. He sat on a rock while the older man examined the wound. Sarah hovered close, her hands twisting together anxiously. Clean wound, Diego pronounced. Bullet kissed you but didn't stay for breakfast. You'll live, though you'll hurt for a while. Senora, you look like you could use doctoring too. Sarah flinched. I'm fine. With respect, you are not fine. Your face has been used for a punching bag, and you're standing like someone with broken ribs or worse. Diego's voice was gentle but firm. When we get back to the ranch, you'll let me look at you proper. No arguments. I can't. Sarah looked at Cole helplessly. Diego used to be a company surgeon in the Mexican War, Cole said quietly. He's seen and treated worse. You can trust him. Sarah nodded slowly, but Cole could see the shame and fear in her eyes. He understood. She didn't want strangers seeing what had been done to her, didn't want pity or judgment, but she needed medical attention, and pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. Diego worked quickly, binding Cole's ribs with strips of cloth and giving him a leather flask of whiskey to dull the pain. Cole took a long pull and grimaced at the burn. Those men, Diego said quietly, keeping his voice low so the others wouldn't hear. They're coming back. You know that? I know. Marcus said it himself. They'll bring an army. The Daltons? Yeah, long story, but the short version is I made some powerful enemies in Dusty Creek. Enemies with money and men and a grudge that won't quit. Diego was silent for a moment, his hands working steadily. How many will come? Hard to say. Could be a dozen, could be 30. Depends how much help Clayton can buy or intimidate. And when? Soon, maybe 2 days, maybe less if Marcus pushes them. Then we have work to do. Diego finished tying off the bandage and stood. We need to get back to the ranch. Get your wife somewhere safe and warm. Get everyone prepared for what's coming. Cole rose carefully, testing his ribs. Everything hurt, but it was the kind of hurt he could work through. Sarah was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Concern mixed with something else. Gratitude, maybe. Or fear of what came next. Can you ride? He asked her. Do I have a choice? Not really. Miguel brought up 2 fresh horses, leading them with easy competence. Your caballo ran toward home, he told Cole. We'll catch them on the way back. Get your supplies. They mounted up, Sarah moving stiffly but managing. The group formed a protective circle around her and Cole as they set out north at a steady pace. Cole watched Sarah from the corner of his eye, saw the way she held herself rigid in the saddle, the careful neutrality of her expression. She was surrounded by strange men, hurt and vulnerable, in a situation she couldn't control. It had to be terrifying. Hey, Cole said quietly, riding close enough that only she could hear. You're safe with these men. I promise you that. How can you promise that? You barely know them. I know Diego, and I know Miguel. The others are good men from good families. They won't hurt you. Men always hurt me. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. That's what men do. Cole didn't have an answer for that. She was right in her experience. Every man in her life had hurt her or failed to protect her from hurt. Why should she trust these strangers just because he vouched for them? They rode in silence for a while, the landscape changing as they moved deeper into Cole's territory. The land here was beautiful in a harsh way, pine forests giving way to meadows, mountains rising in the distance like ancient sentinels. Cole had chosen this place for its isolation, its defensibility, its distance from towns and people and trouble. Now that isolation felt more like exposure. When the Daltons came, and they would come, this remote ranch would become a battlefield with no help for miles. They found Cole's horses grazing peacefully near a creek, their saddles intact and supplies only slightly scattered. Diego's men gathered everything efficiently, while Sarah dismounted and sat heavily on a fallen log. Her face had gone gray with pain and exhaustion. Cole knelt beside her. "How's your leg?" "Hurts, but I can keep going. We're almost there. Another hour, maybe less." "Good." She looked at him, really looked at him, studying his face like she was trying to memorize it. "Cole, what's going to happen when we get to your ranch? What do I do there? What am I supposed to be?" "You're supposed to rest, heal, get your strength back. And after that? After that, you decide. You can stay, you can go, you can do whatever you want. But right now, you need to let yourself stop running and start recovering." Sarah nodded slowly. "I don't know how to do that. How to just stop. I've been running or fighting or surviving for so long, I don't remember what it's like to just exist." "Then I'll teach you. Same as I'll teach you to shoot and fight. I'll teach you how to just be." "You make it sound simple." "Most important things are simple, just not easy." Miguel approached with a canteen of water, offering it to Sarah with a shy smile. She took it with trembling hands and drank deeply. When she lowered the canteen, she looked at the young man. "Thank you," she said, "for the water and for coming to help us." Miguel's ears went red. "De nada, señora. You are la jefa now. We protect our own." Sarah looked confused. "La jefa?" "The boss's wife," Cole translated. "The boss lady. Miguel's saying you're one of us now." Something flickered in Sarah's eyes, surprise, maybe, or the beginning of hope. She nodded at Miguel, who ducked his head and hurried away. "They really see me that way?" Sarah asked. "As one of them?" "If I say you are, they will." Diego and Miguel are loyal to the bone, and the others respect Diego. If he accepts you, they will too. "Even looking like this?" She gestured at her battered face. "Especially looking like that. Every man here has scars, Sarah. We all carry marks from the things that tried to break us. They'll see yours and know you're a survivor. That's respected in this country." "I don't feel like a survivor. I feel like someone who just got lucky that you walked into that store." "Luck was me being there. Survival was you saying yes when I asked you to marry me. That took courage." Sarah looked away, blinking rapidly. "Saying yes was the easy part. I had nothing to lose. You're the one who risked everything. Maybe I had nothing to lose either." She looked back at him, and in her eyes Cole saw understanding, recognition of a kindred loneliness, the isolation of someone who'd cut themselves off from the world. Are we both just damaged people looking for something to hold on to? Maybe. Does that make it wrong? No, it just makes it human. They remounted and continued north, the sun sinking toward the horizon and painting the sky in shades of fire. As they crested a final ridge, Cole pointed ahead. "There. That's home." Sarah looked where he indicated and saw a valley spread out below them, green and lush with a river running through it. Buildings clustered together in a rough square. A main house, a barn, corrals, storage sheds. It was small compared to the Dalton spread, but it looked solid and well-maintained. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, a welcoming sign of warmth and safety. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered. "It's ours, for as long as you want it to be." They descended into the valley as twilight gathered. Dogs barked a welcome, and a woman emerged from the main house, Diego's wife, Rosa, wiping her hands on an apron. She took one look at Cole's bloody shirt and Sarah's battered face and immediately began issuing orders in rapid-fire Spanish. Within minutes, Sarah was being ushered into the house by Rosa, while Diego organized the men to tend the horses and secure the property. Cole tried to follow Sarah inside, but Rosa stopped him with a firm hand. "You wait, Jefe. Let me look at your wife first. Alone. She needs a woman right now, not more men crowding her." Cole wanted to argue, but recognized the wisdom in Rosa's words. He nodded and turned to help Diego, though every instinct screamed at him to stay close to Sarah, to make sure she was safe. Diego read his face and smiled. "Rosa will take good care of her. She has a gift for healing bodies and spirits. Your wife will be better for her attention." "I know, you feel responsible for her. This is natural. But trust Rosa. She's seen women hurt by men before. She knows how to help." Cole and Diego worked together to organize defenses. They stationed men at strategic points around the ranch. set up rotating watches, checked ammunition supplies. The ranch hands went about their tasks with quiet efficiency, asking no questions but understanding the gravity of the situation. Miguel approached as they were checking the barn. "Papa, how many men do you think will come?" "Enough to be trouble," Diego said. "Maybe 20, maybe more. These Daltons sound like men who will bring overwhelming force. Can we hold them off? We can make them pay dearly for trying, but if they're willing to spend enough blood, eventually they'll break through." Diego looked at his son seriously. "You understand what this means, mijo. If you stay, you might die." "I won't think less of you if you choose to leave." Miguel straightened his spine. "El Jefe gave us work when no one else would, treated us with respect, paid us fair. I'm not leaving." Diego gripped his son's shoulder. "I'm proud of you." "What about the other men?" Cole asked. "The ones from neighboring ranches? They've got their own families to protect. I can't ask them to die for me." "You didn't ask. They came because they wanted to." Diego gestured at the men working around the ranch. "In this country, loyalty matters. Reputation matters. You've been a good neighbor, Jefe, fair and honest. Men remember that, and they remember that the Daltons are not good neighbors. Helping you is also helping themselves, showing that bullies can't just take what they want." Cole watched the men working and felt humbled by their willingness to stand with him. "I don't deserve this." "Probably not. But that's the thing about good people. They help anyway." Diego clapped him on the shoulder. "Come, let's see if Rosa is done with your wife." Inside the main house, Cole found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table wrapped in a blanket, her hair wet from being washed. Rosa had cleaned the blood from her face and treated the cuts with some kind of salve that smelled of herbs. The bruises looked worse now that they were clean, but Sarah's eyes were clearer. "Your wife has 3 cracked ribs, a broken finger, and that leg fracture you suspected," Rosa said briskly. "Also extensive bruising and cuts. I've wrapped what needs wrapping and given her willow bark tea for the pain. She needs rest, good food, and time." "Thank you, Rosa." "Don't thank me. Just keep her safe." Rosa looked at Cole sternly. "She told me what those animals did to her, what they were still doing. You saved her life by taking her away from there." Sarah stood carefully, testing her wrapped ribs. "Rosa's been very kind. She showed me where I'll be sleeping." Cole followed Sarah's gaze to the doorway leading to the house's single bedroom. His bedroom. He'd been planning to give it to her and sleep in the barn, but now that plan seemed inadequate. She needed privacy, safety, a space that was hers. "You take the room," Cole said. "I'll sleep out here by the fire. That way I'm between you and the door if anyone comes." "You don't have to." "I do. You need real rest, and you won't get that if you're worried about men walking in on you. The room is yours." End of discussion. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue but was too exhausted. She nodded and let Rosa guide her to the bedroom. At the door, she turned back to look at Cole. "Good night," she said softly. "And thank you. Again. Stop thanking me. Make me." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Diego watched this exchange with knowing eyes. "You care for her." "She's my wife." "In name, you said." "But I think maybe it's becoming more than that." Cole didn't answer. He didn't know how to put into words what he felt, this tangle of protectiveness and guilt, and something else, something that might be the beginning of affection if given time to grow. Sarah was brave and broken and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her bruised face and everything to do with the strength in her eyes. But she'd been hurt too much, too recently. The last thing she needed was another man wanting something from her. "Get some rest, Diego. Tomorrow we start preparing in earnest." "Sí, jefe. Tomorrow." Diego and Rosa left for their own small house near the barn, leaving Cole alone in the main room. He banked the fire and spread out blankets near the door, his rifle close at hand. Outside, he could hear the sounds of men taking up watch positions, dogs patrolling the perimeter, horses settling in the barn. The ranch felt like a fortress preparing for siege, and in a way, that's exactly what it was. Cole lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling beams and listening to the night sounds. From behind the bedroom door, he could hear nothing. Sarah must have fallen asleep immediately, exhaustion claiming her. He hoped she was having peaceful dreams, though he doubted it. She'd been through too much for peace to come easily. Sometime near midnight, he heard the bedroom door open quietly. Sarah emerged, wrapped in the blanket, her feet bare. She looked at Cole lying by the fire, and in the dim light he could see she'd been crying. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. "Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there, in that house, with them." Her voice shook. "I thought I'd be relieved to be away from it. Instead, I'm terrified they're going to come through that door and drag me back." "They won't. I promise you that." "You can't promise that. You're one man." "I'm not just one man. I've got Diego and Miguel and a dozen others. We're all armed and ready. And even if the Daltons get through all of us, they still have to go through me to get to you. And that's not going to happen." Sarah moved closer to the fire, hugging herself. "What if they do get through? What if they kill you and take me back? What if everything we've done just makes them angrier? Then we make them pay so dearly for it that every other bully in Montana Territory thinks twice before hurting someone weaker. We make them an example." Cole sat up, meeting her eyes. "Sarah, I can't guarantee we'll win. I can't promise you'll never be afraid again. But I can promise that I will fight for you until my last breath. That has to be enough because it's all I've got to give." Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks, catching the firelight. "Why? Why would you do that for someone you barely know?" "Because it's right. Because you deserve it. Because I failed someone else once, and I'm not failing again." Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. Whatever comes, we face it together." She squeezed his hand hard enough to hurt. "I'm scared, Cole. I'm so scared." "I know. Being scared is smart. But being scared and doing it anyway? That's courage. And you're the bravest person I know." Sarah laughed wetly. "I don't feel brave. I feel like a coward who ran away." Running from someone trying to kill you isn't cowardice, it's survival. And survival is the first step toward fighting back. "You really believe that? That I can fight back?" "I don't just believe it. I know it. I see it in you. That core of steel they tried to break but couldn't. They hurt you, Sarah. They brutalized you. But they didn't break you, and that terrifies them more than anything else I could do to them." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "Tomorrow, you promised to teach me to shoot. I want to start. I want to learn everything. Guns, fighting, defending myself. I want to be someone who can stand beside you instead of hiding behind you. You're already standing beside me. But if you want to learn, I'll teach you. Fair warning, though, it's not going to be easy or pretty. Learning to fight means getting hurt, making mistakes, pushing past fear. I've been hurt plenty. A few more bruises won't matter." Sarah squeezed his hand one more time, then let go. "Thank you for listening, for not telling me I'm being foolish or weak. You're neither of those things. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Sarah returned to the bedroom, and this time when the door closed, Cole heard the sound of bed springs as she lay down. He settled back onto his makeshift bed and closed his eyes, but sleep remained elusive. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, an owl called to its mate. The wind whispered through the pines. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. But Cole knew it was the calm before the storm. The Daltons were coming. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the day after, but soon. And when they came, they'd bring violence and death and a reckoning that had been building since the moment Cole walked into that store in Dusty Creek and saw a woman who needed help. He'd made his choice. Now he'd live with the consequences. Or die with them. Either way, Cole Brennan was done running, done hiding, done pretending he could avoid the world's ugliness by keeping his distance from it. Sarah had awakened something in him, a sense of purpose he'd thought died with Emma in that Kansas alley. Maybe some people were meant to be heroes, whether they wanted to be or not. Maybe redemption wasn't something you earned. It was something you fought for, one desperate choice at a time. The fire burned down to embers. The night deepened. And in a small ranch at the edge of civilization, two damaged people tried to sleep while preparing for the war they knew was coming. Tomorrow would bring training and preparation and the careful fortification of their small piece of safety. But tonight, just for tonight, they had survived another day. They were alive, together, and free. For now, that had to be enough. Dawn came cold and clear, the sun climbing over the eastern ridge like a promise, and a threat rolled into one. Cole woke to the sound of men moving outside, the clank of metal on metal as weapons were checked and cleaned, the low murmur of voices discussing fields of fire and defensive positions. He rose stiffly, his ribs screaming protest at every movement, and found Diego already up and coordinating the preparations. "Morning, Jefe. Your wife is awake. Rosa took her some breakfast." Diego gestured toward the bedroom door. "She asked about you. Wanted to know if you were all right." Cole felt something warm in his chest at that. "I'm fine, just sore. Sore gets men killed. You should rest today. Let that wound heal." "Can't afford to rest. Not with the Daltons coming." Cole accepted a cup of coffee from Diego and drank it black and scalding. "How are we looking?" "We've got 16 men total, including you and me. Miguel is the youngest at 20, Old Thomas the oldest at 62. All can shoot, most have seen violence before. I've got them positioned around the ranch in overlapping fields. No one can approach from any direction without being seen and fired upon." Diego paused. "It's not enough, Cole. If the Daltons come with 30 men like we expect, we'll be outnumbered 2-1. Maybe worse. Numbers don't always win fights. Determination does. Willingness to die for something. And what are we dying for? Your wife. For the principle that strong men can't just take what they want from weak people. For the idea that standing up matters, even when it's dangerous." Cole looked at Diego steadily. "You can still leave. Take Rosa and Miguel and go. I'll understand." Diego's weathered face creased into a smile. "If I wanted safety, I would have stayed in Mexico. I came north looking for something worth fighting for. Looks like I found it." He clapped Cole on the shoulder. "Besides, Rosa would kill me if I abandoned La Señora now. She's taken a liking to your wife. Says she has strength hidden under all that fear. Rosa's a good judge of character." "That she is. Now come, let's check the perimeter before your wife finishes eating. She'll want to see you." They walked the ranch together, Diego pointing out the defensive arrangements he'd made. The barn had been converted into a strong point, with rifle slots cut into the walls and water barrels positioned for firefighting. The corrals had been emptied, horses moved to a protected meadow a mile north where they'd be safe from stray bullets. Barricades of overturned wagons and stacked wood blocked the main approaches. It looked like a fortress. It looked like a place preparing for war. "How long can we hold?" Cole asked. "Depends on their tactics. If they're smart, they'll try to burn us out, set fire to the buildings, and pick us off as we run. If they're stupid and angry, they'll charge straight in and we'll cut them down until the bodies pile up." Diego squinted at the sun. "My guess? Clayton is smart. He'll try fire first, which means we need men ready with water, ready to move fast when the flames start. And if that doesn't work, then it becomes a siege. They surround us, cut off water and supplies, wait us out. We've got maybe a week's worth of food and ammunition. After that," Diego shrugged, "after that, we start making hard choices." Cole absorbed this grimly. A week. They had a week to either win decisively or find another solution. The odds weren't good, but they never had been, not since he'd opened his mouth in that Dusty Creek general store. They were finishing their inspection when Sarah emerged from the house, moving slowly but steadier than yesterday. She'd borrowed clothes from Rosa, a simple dress that hung loose on her thin frame, her hair braided back from her bruised face. In the morning light, the extent of her injuries was impossible to ignore. Both eyes were blackened, her lips split and swollen, her cheekbone carrying a bruise that spread like spilled wine across pale skin. But her eyes were clear and focused, and she walked toward Cole with determination in every careful step. "You promised to teach me," she said without preamble. "I want to start now." Cole exchanged a glance with Diego, who smiled and nodded. "I'll leave you to it. I have men to organize." He tipped his hat to Sarah. "Señora, you are very brave. Don't let anyone tell you different." Sarah watched him go, then turned back to Cole. "I didn't sleep much. Kept thinking about what you said, about standing beside you instead of hiding behind you. I want that. I need that. So teach me." "You're hurt. Maybe you should wait a few days." "We don't have a few days. You said they're coming soon, maybe in 2 days. If I'm going to learn anything useful, it has to be now." She met his eyes squarely. I know I won't become a gunfighter overnight, but I can learn enough to defend myself, to maybe hit what I'm aiming at. That's all I'm asking. Cole studied her face, the set of her jaw, the steel in her gaze, the way she held herself despite obvious pain. She meant it. She was done being helpless, done waiting for men to decide her fate. All right, he said. Let's start with basics. Come on. He led her to a cleared area behind the barn where they'd set up targets, old bottles and cans arranged on a fence rail about 20 yards out. Miguel was already there, practicing his draw, the young man's movements smooth and practiced. Miguel, we're going to use the range. Mind spotting for us? Of course, Jefe. Miguel holstered his pistol and moved to the side, giving them space. Cole drew his revolver and handed it to Sarah. She took it gingerly, surprised by its weight. First rule, Cole said. The gun is always loaded, even when it's not. You treat it with respect, never point it at anything you don't intend to kill. Understand? Yes. Second rule, shooting is about breathing and stillness. You don't muscle the gun, you don't jerk the trigger. You breathe out slow and squeeze gentle, like you're trying not to wake someone sleeping. He moved behind her, adjusting her stance. Feet shoulder width apart. Bend your knees slightly. Extend your arm, not locked, a little flex in the elbow. Good. Now sight down the barrel. See how it lines up with that bottle on the left? Sarah squinted down the sights, her hands shaking slightly. I see it. Now breathe, in then out slow. When your breath is about half gone, squeeze the trigger. Don't anticipate the shot. Just let it happen. Sarah breathed as instructed, her whole body tense with concentration. The gun bucked in her hand with a sharp crack that made her flinch. The bullet kicked up dirt 3 feet to the right of the targets. I missed. Of course you missed. That was your first shot. Try again. And don't flinch this time. Anticipating the recoil makes you pull the shot. She tried again. Another miss, but closer. Then again. And again. By the 6th shot, she clipped the edge of a bottle, sending it spinning. Her face lit up with triumph. I hit it! You did. Now do it again. Consistency matters more than lucky shots. They worked for an hour, Cole correcting her stance and grip, teaching her to control her breathing and squeeze smoothly. Miguel offered encouragement and spotted where her shots went. Rosa appeared with water and quietly watched, her face approving. By the end of the session, Sarah was hitting targets about half the time. Not great, but better than most people managed their first day. Her hands were shaking from the gun's recoil, and her cracked ribs were clearly causing her agony with every shot, but she never complained. That's enough for now, Cole said finally. You're hurting yourself. I can keep going. You can, but you shouldn't. Pain makes you tense, and tension makes you miss. Rest those ribs, and we'll practice again this afternoon. Sarah reluctantly handed back the gun. How long until I'm actually good at this? Depends on what you mean by good. To hit a man-sized target at 20 yards? You're almost there. To hit a moving target in the heat of combat while people are shooting back? That takes years. Cole saw her face fall and added quickly, but you don't need to be a master. You just need to be dangerous enough that anyone thinking about hurting you has to consider whether it's worth the risk. And am I dangerous enough? Getting there. Give it a few more days of practice, and yes, you'll be dangerous enough to make someone think twice. Cole paused. But there's more to fighting than shooting. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her to an open area near the house where Miguel had set up a training dummy, burlap sacks stuffed with straw and hung from a tree branch. Cole picked up 2 sticks, each about a foot long, and handed one to Sarah. Fighting isn't always at a distance. Sometimes it's close, ugly, desperate. And when that happens, you need to know how to hurt someone quickly and get away. He demonstrated on the dummy, striking at joints and vulnerable points. Eyes, throat, groin, knees. You're not trying to win a fair fight. There's no such thing. You're trying to cause enough pain that they let go, give you an opening to run or grab a weapon. What if I'm not strong enough? The Daltons are all bigger than me. Doesn't matter. Pain is pain, and everyone has vulnerable spots. Here. Cole moved behind the dummy and gestured for Sarah to approach. Pretend this is someone grabbing you from behind. What do you do? I don't know. Pull away? No. You use what you have. Stomp down hard on their instep. All your weight on a heel, right on those small bones. It'll hurt bad enough they'll loosen their grip. Then you drive your elbow back into their gut or ribs. Then you turn and go for the eyes or throat. Fast, vicious, no hesitation. Sarah stared at the dummy uncertainly. I don't know if I can be that violent. You can. Everyone can when survival demands it. You just need to give yourself permission. Cole looked at her seriously. Sarah, the men who hurt you counted on you being too scared or too conditioned to fight back. They counted on you believing you were helpless. Prove them wrong. Show yourself you're not that person anymore. Something shifted in Sarah's face. She approached the dummy, raised her stick, and struck hard at where Cole had indicated the throat. The dummy swung wildly on its rope. She struck again, harder, aiming for the eyes. Then again and again, each blow coming faster and with more force. Stop thinking, Cole called. Just react. Someone grabs you. What do you do? Sarah spun and drove the stick into the dummy's midsection, then up toward its face. Her movements were raw and unpracticed, but carried genuine fury. She was breathing hard, her face flushed. Good! Again, they don't stop because you hit them once. They stop when they can't continue. Sarah attacked the dummy with increasing ferocity, months of fear and rage finding outlet in violence against the inanimate target. She struck until her arms trembled and sweat ran down her face despite the cool morning air. Finally, she stopped, gasping, tears mixing with sweat. I hate them, she said, her voice breaking. I hate them so much. I know. Use that. Channel it. Hate can be fuel if you control it instead of letting it control you. Sarah dropped the stick and turned away, hugging herself. Miguel, who'd been watching quietly, looked uncomfortable. Cole gave him a nod, and the young man slipped away, understanding that Sarah needed space. I'm sorry, Sarah said, her back still to Cole. I shouldn't have lost control like that. You didn't lose control. You let yourself feel what you've been suppressing. That's different. That's healthy even. Cole moved closer, but didn't touch her, respecting her space. The Daltons wanted you scared and small. Every time you fight back, every time you refuse to be what they tried to make you, you win. You understand that? I'm tired of winning by just surviving. I want to win by making them lose. She turned to face him, and her eyes held something new, not just fear or determination, but actual anger, clean, focused anger. When they come, I want to fight, not hide in the house while you and the others do the fighting. I want to be out there making them pay. Sarah, I mean it. I know I'm not trained, I know I'm hurt, but I can load rifles for men who are shooting. I can watch for flanking attacks. I can do something useful instead of cowering. Her hands clenched into fists. Please don't take this away from me. Don't protect me so much I'm helpless again. Cole saw the plea in her eyes and understood it. She needed agency, needed to participate in her own defense. Keeping her locked away safe would feel like just another form of control, another man deciding what she could and couldn't do. All right, he said. When they come, you fight. But you stay close to me or Diego, someone who can cover you if things go bad. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no heroics. Deal? Deal. Relief flooded her face. Thank you for understanding, for not treating me like I'm made of glass. You're not glass, you're steel with a few dents. Still plenty strong. They walked back toward the house together, Sarah moving with more confidence than she had that morning. Diego intercepted them near the porch, his face grim. We've got visitors. 2 riders coming from the south, flying a white flag. Cole's hand went to his gun. Daltons? One of them is Marcus. Don't know the other. All right, let's see what they want. Miguel! Cole raised his voice. Get the men ready. If this goes bad, I want those riders dead before they make it off the property. Sarah grabbed his arm. Cole, be careful. This could be a trick. Probably is. But we still need to hear what they have to say. Stay here with Rosa. If shooting starts, get inside and stay down. I thought we agreed. We agreed you fight when they attack. This is different. This is talking, and I need to focus on that without worrying about you. Cole softened his tone. Please, Sarah, trust me on this. She nodded reluctantly and moved toward the house where Rosa waited. Cole and Diego walked out to meet the riders, flanked by 6 armed men who materialized from cover positions around the ranch. The message was clear. They were outnumbered and outgunned before they even arrived. Marcus Dalton rode with his left arm in a sling, his face gray with pain and pale with rage. The man beside him was older, maybe 50, wearing a sheriff's badge that caught the morning sun. Cole recognized the type immediately. A bought lawman, probably the cousin Marcus had mentioned back in Dusty Creek. They stopped 30 yards out, keeping their hands visible and away from weapons. Marcus's eyes locked onto Cole with pure hatred. "You shot me, you son of a bitch!" "You tried to kill me first. Seems fair." "Sheriff Dalton wants to talk to you," Marcus said, gesturing to his companion. "Official business." The sheriff urged his horse forward a few steps. "I'm Sheriff Robert Dalton, duly appointed law for Madison County. I'm here to serve a warrant for the arrest of one Cole Brennan on charges of assault, kidnapping, and theft." Cole almost laughed. "Kidnapping? I married her legal and proper, with witnesses. You coerced a vulnerable woman into a sham marriage to steal her away from her legal guardians. That's kidnapping in the eyes of the law. And you assaulted Marcus here, shot him in cold blood. That's attempted murder." The sheriff's voice was smooth, practiced. He'd done this before, used the law as a weapon against people who couldn't fight back through the legal system. Legal guardians? Sarah's a grown woman, free to marry who she wants. She was under the protection and care of the Dalton family after her husband's death. They had a legal obligation to care for her, which means they had authority over her until she remarried properly. Your marriage was invalid, performed under duress, with you threatening violence if anyone interfered. That's horse shit, and you know it. That's the law, Mr. Brennan, and I'm here to enforce it. You're going to come with me peacefully, stand trial in Dusty Creek. If you're innocent, jury will sort it out. Right, a jury in a town the Daltons control. That'll be real fair." Sheriff Dalton shrugged. "Justice works same everywhere. You don't trust it, that's your problem. But you are coming with me, one way or another. Question is whether anyone else dies first." Diego stepped forward. "And what about Sarah? What happens to her?" "Mrs. Calloway will be returned to her family's care, pending resolution of the marriage's legality. Don't worry, she'll be treated well." Marcus's smile said otherwise. Cole felt rage building in his chest, hot and immediate. They wanted to take him away for a show trial that would end with a hanging, then drag Sarah back to Dusty Creek, where the Daltons would finish what they'd started. It was a neat legal fiction wrapped around the same old brutality. "Not happening," Cole said flatly. "Tell Clayton he can take his warrant and shove it up his ass. Sarah stays here, I stay here, and if you want us, come take us." "That's resisting arrest," the sheriff said. "That makes you an outlaw." "Then I'm an outlaw. Beats being a dead man pretending the law gives a damn about justice." Marcus leaned forward in his saddle, his face twisted with pain and fury. "You really want to do this? You want war? Because that's what you're asking for. My brothers are already gathering men, 24 so far, maybe more. They'll burn this place to the ground and everyone in it. Your people, your wife, everyone. And it'll all be legal because you're resisting arrest. Let them come. We'll be ready." "You can't win this, Brennan. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and now you're outlaws. No help is coming. No marshal is going to ride to your rescue. You're alone." "He's not alone." Diego's voice was hard. "He has us. And we don't recognize your authority here, Sheriff. This is private property, and you're trespassing. Leave now before we exercise our rights as property owners to defend ourselves." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake, Diego Martinez. I know who you are. You got family in town. Would be a shame if something happened to them because you chose the wrong side." "My family is here," Diego said calmly. "And we don't respond well to threats. You have 10 seconds to turn around and leave. After that, I can't guarantee your safety." Marcus was nearly purple with rage. "You're all dead men, every single one of you. When we come back—" A shot cracked out from somewhere in the ranch. The bullet kicked up dirt directly between the two horses, making them rear and dance. The sheriff fought for control, his face going white. 9 seconds, Diego called out. "Keep talking, and it'll be your last words." The sheriff and Marcus wheeled their horses and galloped south, the white flag forgotten in their flight. Cole watched them disappear over the ridge, then turned to Diego. "That bought us maybe a day. They'll be back with everyone they can muster. Then we use the day to prepare." Diego's face was grim. "That threat about my family, he meant it. They'll use anyone they can to hurt us. Send Miguel with a wagon. Have him bring anyone from town who wants to leave.
Anyone the Daltons might target. We'll shelter them here. That could be a dozen families, Cole. We don't have supplies for... Then we'll stretch what we have. I'm not letting innocent people suffer because I made enemies. Cole looked at the assembled men.
Anyone who wants out, now's the time. No judgment. But once the fighting starts, there's no leaving. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence itself was answer enough. All right then. Cole took a deep breath. Let's get ready for war. The rest of the day passed in frantic preparation. Miguel rode out with a wagon and returned hours later with 17 people, women, children, old folks, all people who'd spoken out against the Daltons or helped Sarah in small ways over the months. Pete the storekeeper came with his daughter Jenny, who immediately went to Sarah and embraced her with tears streaming down both their faces. "I'm so glad you're safe," Jenny whispered. "When you disappeared, I thought they'd killed you." "Almost did. Cole saved me." Sarah pulled back and looked at her friend. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you for helping him?" "Clayton came to the store after you left. Threatened Papa, smashed some merchandise. But he didn't hurt us, probably because half the town was watching. I think your escape embarrassed him more than it angered him." Jenny's expression turned serious. "But he's gathering an army, Sarah. Every hard case and hired gun within 50 miles. He's offering $50 to anyone who rides with him, twice that for anyone who brings Cole in alive." "We know. They came here with a warrant. Can you believe that? Trying to make it legal. Clayton's smart. He wants to be able to say he tried to do things proper before resorting to violence. Makes him look reasonable to anyone asking questions later." Jenny looked around the ranch, taking in the defensive preparations. "You can't win this. There's too many of them." "Maybe, but we're going to try anyway." Sarah spent the afternoon helping organize the refugees, finding places for them to sleep, distributing what food they had, keeping children calm despite the fear radiating from their parents. Cole watched her work and saw a different woman than the one he'd pulled out of Dusty Creek. She moved with purpose now, spoke with authority, made decisions without constantly looking to others for approval. She was becoming the person she'd decided to be, strong enough that no one could make her feel helpless again. As evening fell, Cole gathered everyone in the barn, his men, the refugees, Sarah, Diego, and Rosa. Faces looked back at him with varying degrees of fear and determination. "You all know why you're here," Cole began. "The Daltons are coming, probably tomorrow or the day after. They'll come in force, and they'll come meaning to kill everyone who stood against them. Some of you might be thinking it'd be easier to just give them what they want. Hand over Sarah and me, go back to your lives." A few people shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. "I won't blame anyone who thinks that. But here's what you need to understand. The Daltons don't stop. Give them what they want now, and they'll just want more later. They'll use fear to control everyone, use violence to enforce their will. Today, it's Sarah and me. Tomorrow, it's someone else. Eventually, it's everyone, living scared and small because no one had the courage to say no." Cole paused, letting that sink in. "I'm not a good man. I've done things I'm not proud of, hurt people who probably didn't deserve it. But I know right from wrong, and what the Daltons do is wrong. So tomorrow or the next day, when they come, we're going to show them that bullies can't just take what they want. We're going to make them pay such a price that every other hard case in Montana thinks twice before hurting someone weaker." "And if we lose," someone called from the back, "if they kill us all, then we lose. But we lose standing up, fighting back, refusing to bow. And that matters. That means something." Cole looked at each face, meeting their eyes. "I won't lie to you. Our chances aren't good. We're outnumbered, and they have resources we don't. But we have something they don't. We have a reason to fight beyond money or power. We're fighting for each other, for the right to live free from fear. And that makes us dangerous in ways they can't understand." Sarah stood up, moving to Cole's side. Her bruised face was set with determination. "The Daltons took everything from me," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the barn. "My dignity, my safety, my hope. They wanted to break me completely, make me into nothing. But they failed. They failed because Cole gave me a chance to fight back. And now I'm standing here, free, ready to face them." She looked at the gathered people. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But I'd rather die fighting than live one more day under their control. So when they come, I'm going to be on those walls with a rifle, and I'm going to make them regret every bruise they gave me every time they made me feel small. Who's with me?" Jenny stood first. "I am." Then Pete. "Me too." Then others, standing one by one until everyone was on their feet. Old Thomas, who'd survived the Civil War and Indian fighting. Young mothers with children they'd die to protect. Men who'd been pushed around once too often and found their limit. Diego raised his rifle. "For Sarah, for freedom, for showing the bastards we won't bow." The cheer that went up shook the barn rafters. Cole felt something swell in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. Or just the simple recognition that sometimes people surprised you. Sometimes they found courage they didn't know they had. Sarah leaned close to him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me this chance, for making me believe I could be strong. You were always strong. I just helped you see it. Then help me stay strong. When they come, when it gets bad, don't let me break again. Never. I promise you that." Cole took her hand and squeezed it gently. "We're partners in survival, remember? Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," Sarah agreed. Night fell over the ranch, but no one slept much. Men checked weapons, loaded ammunition, said quiet prayers or curses depending on their inclinations. Children whimpered until their mothers hushed them. Diego walked the perimeter one last time, making sure every position was manned and ready. Cole found Sarah on the porch, staring south toward where the Daltons would come from. He sat beside her without speaking, and they watched the stars wheel slowly overhead. "Do you think we'll survive this?" Sarah asked finally. "Honestly, I don't know. Odds aren't in our favor. But you do it anyway, even knowing we'll probably die." "Yes." "Why?" "You could still run, take your horse and disappear into the mountains. They want me, not you. You'd be safe." Cole was quiet for a long moment. 2 years ago, I ran. I left Kansas after Emma died, and I ran from everything, from guilt, from responsibility, from caring about anyone. I told myself isolation was safety, that if I didn't get involved, I couldn't get hurt, and maybe that was true. But it was also cowardice. He looked at Sarah. "You asked me once what kind of man marries a stranger to save her. The answer is a man trying to be better than he was, trying to prove he can do the right thing even when it's hard and dangerous." "I won't run again, Sarah. Not from this. Not from you." Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks, catching starlight. "You're a good man, Cole Brennan. Better than you believe. And if we die tomorrow, I want you to know I'm grateful. For everything. For seeing me. For giving me my life back. We're not dying tomorrow. We're fighting tomorrow. Big difference." She laughed wetly. "You always know what to say." "No, I usually say exactly the wrong thing, but sometimes I get lucky." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen, preparing for whatever dawn would bring. And when Sarah finally leaned against Cole's shoulder, her head resting on him in simple companionship, he felt something crack open in his chest, the wall he'd built around his heart after Emma, the isolation he'd used as armor. Maybe caring about someone wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the only thing that made fighting worth it. The stars burned cold and distant overhead. The night wind carried the scent of pine and coming rain. And on a small ranch at the edge of civilization, broken people prepared to face their demons and prove that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. Tomorrow would bring violence and blood and a reckoning 2 years in the making. But tonight, Cole Brennan and Sarah Calloway sat together under the Montana stars and found something neither had expected. Hope. Not hope that they'd win, but hope that fighting back mattered. That standing up for what was right had value beyond outcome. And sometimes that had to be enough. The dawn of the second day broke gray and cold, clouds gathering over the mountains like smoke from distant fires. Cole woke from a restless half-sleep to find Sarah already awake, sitting at the kitchen table cleaning a rifle with movements Diego had taught her the day before. Her hands were steady, her face set with calm determination that looked nothing like the terrified woman he'd met in Dusty Creek. "Couldn't sleep?" Cole asked. "Didn't want to. Figured I should make myself useful." Sarah ran the cleaning cloth down the barrel one more time, then set the rifle aside. "Diego says they'll come today. He can feel it in the air, he says, like animals before a storm. Diego's usually right about these things. Cole poured himself coffee from the pot Rosa had left warming. How are you feeling? Scared? Ready? Both at the same time. Sarah looked at him, and in the gray morning light, her bruised face seemed to carry a kind of terrible beauty, the marks of survival, of refusing to be broken. Is that normal? That's the only normal there is before a fight. Anyone who says they're not scared is either lying or too stupid to understand the danger. Sarah smiled slightly. You're scared too? Terrified, but scared and doing it anyway. That's what courage is. They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the light strengthen outside. Around them, the ranch was coming alive. Men checking weapons, taking up positions, making peace with whatever came next. The refugees had been moved to the root cellar beneath the house, the safest place if things went badly. Jenny had insisted on staying with Sarah despite Cole's protests, and now the two women sat together, friends reunited in the eye of violence. Diego appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grim. Riders on the horizon, maybe 30 of them, spread out in a line. They're not hiding anymore. Cole set down his coffee cup and stood. Everyone in position? See, Miguel is in the barn with 5 men. Thomas and his group are covering the north approach. I have the east and west flanked. You wanted the main house? Yeah. Sarah and I will hold here with Jenny, and whoever else can shoot straight. Cole looked at Sarah. Last chance to change your mind. Go down to the cellar with the others. No, I told you. I'm fighting. Sarah picked up the rifle she'd been cleaning and checked the action. Her hands didn't shake. They want me afraid and helpless. I'm done giving them what they want. Diego nodded approvingly. You have become strong, Senora. Your husband should be proud. I am, Cole said quietly, and meant it with everything he had. Diego gripped Cole's shoulder once, hard, then left to take his position. Cole and Sarah moved to the windows, pushing furniture against the walls to create protected firing positions. Jenny joined them, her face pale but resolute, carrying an old shotgun her father had taught her to use years ago. Papa's in the barn with Miguel, she said. He told me to tell you he's ready, that he's glad he finally found the courage to stand up. Your father's a brave man, always was. Sometimes it just takes the right moment for that bravery to show. They waited. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Cole could see the line of riders now, dark shapes against the gray morning, moving at a walk, confident, certain of their victory. Why wouldn't they be? They had numbers, resources, the law on their side. But they didn't have what Cole's people had. They didn't have something worth dying for. The riders stopped about 200 yards out, just beyond effective rifle range. Clayton Dalton rode forward alone, his horse dancing nervously. He was dressed like he was going to a wedding, black suit, white shirt, even a string tie, making a statement, showing he saw this as business, not personal. Brennan, Clayton's voice carried across the distance. I'm going to give you one last chance. Send out Sarah and surrender yourself. Everyone else goes free. You have my word. Your word isn't worth the spit to say it, Cole shouted back. Then you're condemning everyone in there to death. Their blood is on your hands. Sarah moved to the window beside Cole. My blood is my own, Clayton Dalton. Her voice rang out clear and strong. And you'll never touch me again. Come if you're coming, but know that I'll die before I go back to you. A ripple of surprise went through the line of riders. They'd expected the broken, terrified woman they'd spent months crushing. Instead, they saw someone transformed, defiant, dangerous. Clayton's face darkened. So be it. Marcus, Travis, burn them out! The riders surged forward, splitting into 3 groups. Marcus led one force toward the barn, Travis another toward the eastern defenses, while Clayton held the center with the largest group, heading straight for the main house. They came fast, whooping and firing from horseback, more to intimidate than to hit anything at that distance. Hold your fire, Cole called out. Wait until they're close enough to count. The thunder of hooves grew louder. 50 yards. 40. Cole could see individual faces now, hard men motivated by money and the promise of violence. Men who'd never questioned whether what they were doing was right, only whether they'd be paid. Now! Cole shouted. The ranch erupted in gunfire. Cole's first shot took a rider in the chest,
spinning him from his saddle. Sarah fired beside him, her bullet catching a horse that went down screaming, throwing its rider into the dirt. All along the defensive line, rifles spoke their deadly language. The charge faltered as men and horses fell. The attackers had expected token resistance, maybe a few wild shots before overwhelming their target. Instead, they ran into disciplined fire from entrenched positions. The cost was immediate and brutal. Clayton was screaming orders, trying to rally his men. Some wheeled away, their nerve broken. Others pressed forward, returning fire now, bullets hammering into the house and barn. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Jenny cried out as a fragment cut her cheek, but she kept firing, her shotgun roaring. Cole saw Travis break off with a group of riders, circling toward the north. "Diego, north side!" Diego's men were ready. A volley of shots dropped 3 riders immediately. Travis's horse stumbled and fell, sending the massive man rolling. He came up with his gun drawn, firing wildly, catching one of Diego's men in the shoulder before return fire drove him into cover behind a water trough. The main assault on the house had stalled 50 feet from the porch, pinned down by crossfire. Cole counted bodies. 8 men down, maybe more wounded. But Clayton's force still had numbers, and now they were taking cover, preparing for a sustained fight. "They're going to try to burn us out," Sarah shouted over the gunfire. "Look, some of them have torches." She was right. 6 men had dismounted and were lighting torches, preparing to rush the buildings while others provided covering fire. It was smart tactics, exactly what Diego had predicted. "Miguel!" Cole roared. "Torches incoming!" From the barn, Miguel's rifle spoke precisely, dropping one torchbearer, then another. But there were too many, coming from too many directions. A torch arced through the air and landed on the roof of a storage shed. Within seconds, flames were climbing the dry wood. "Rosa! Water detail!" Cole saw the older woman emerge with 3 others running toward the burning shed with buckets. They moved with practiced efficiency, but a shed was one thing. If the main buildings caught fire, they'd never contain it. Marcus had reached the barn despite heavy casualties, and now his men were trying to force the door while others fired through the rifle ports, suppressing Miguel's defenders. Cole could hear the boom of shotguns inside, the screams of men being hit at close range. "I'm going to help Miguel," Cole said to Sarah. "You hold this position." "Cole, no. You can do this. You're strong enough. Trust yourself." He pressed extra ammunition into her hands. "Jenny, you watch Sarah's back. Anyone gets through that door, you cut them in half." Jenny nodded, her young face set hard. "Go, we've got this." Cole ran from the house in a crouch, bullets kicking up dirt around him. He made it to the barn and slammed against the wall beside the door. Inside, he could hear Pete's voice shouting directions, Miguel's calmer tones, the crash of furniture being thrown against barricades. "It's Cole! I'm coming in!" He threw open the door and dove inside, rolling as bullets chased him. Miguel pulled him behind cover, an overturned wagon bed bristling with men and rifles. "They're trying to break in the back," Miguel shouted. "We can't cover both sides." "Then we go meet them. Pete, you hold this position with 3 men. Everyone else, with me." Cole led Miguel and 4 others through the barn toward the back entrance where Marcus's men were hammering at the door. The wood was already splintering, about to give way. Cole positioned his men on either side. "When that door breaks, we hit them hard and fast. Don't give them time to get set. Understood?" The door exploded inward and men rushed through. Cole opened fire at point-blank range, his revolver bucking in his hand. Beside him, Miguel worked his rifle like a machine, levering and firing with devastating accuracy. The doorway became a killing ground, bodies piling up as Marcus's men tried to force entry. "Fall back!" Marcus's voice from outside. "Regroup!" The attack broke off, leaving 4 dead men in the doorway. Cole's ears rang from the gunfire in the enclosed space. He checked his people, 2 wounded but still fighting, everyone else intact. "Reload! They'll try again!" But the second assault never came. Instead, Cole heard new sounds from outside, shouting, confusion, the thunder of many hooves. He risked a look through a rifle port and saw something that stopped his heart. More riders were arriving from the north, 20, maybe 30, riding hard and flying no colors. For a terrible moment, Cole thought Clayton had reinforcements, that the battle was already lost. Then the new riders opened fire, on the Daltons. Diego appeared beside Cole, his face split in a wild grin. "It's the neighbors.
Every rancher within 50 miles. They heard what was happening and came to help. Hope, dangerous and intoxicating, flooded through Cole. We need to coordinate with them, push the Daltons between us and crush them. He ran back through the barn and out into the chaos of battle. The ranch yard was a scene from hell. Smoke from burning buildings, wounded men crawling or lying still, horses running wild with empty saddles. But now the tide was turning. Clayton's men were caught between Cole's defenders and the new arrivals, and they were breaking. Cole saw Travis rise from behind the water trough, his massive form unmistakable. Their eyes met across 30 yards of blood-soaked ground. Travis raised his gun, and Cole did the same. They fired simultaneously. Cole felt something punch him in the left shoulder, spinning him partially around. His own shot took Travis in the gut, doubling him over. But Travis didn't go down. The big man straightened, blood spreading across his shirt, and raised his gun again. Cole tried to bring his own weapon up, but his left arm wasn't responding properly. He was going to die. Shot down by a man too tough to know he was already dead. Then Sarah was there, rifle to her shoulder, and she fired with the steady calm Diego had taught her. The bullet took Travis in the throat. He stood there for a moment, surprise on his face, then toppled like a cut tree. Sarah lowered the rifle, her face pale but composed. "I told you, I'm done being helpless." "You're also hit," Jenny said, appearing beside them and grabbing Cole's good arm. "Come on, we need to get you inside before you bleed out." They made it back to the house as the battle reached its crescendo. The neighboring ranchers, led by a granite-faced man Cole recognized as Tom Crawford from the Triple Bar, were systematically destroying what remained of Clayton's force. The hired guns, seeing they were outnumbered and outfought, were throwing down weapons and fleeing. Only the Daltons and their most loyal men were still fighting. Rosa was waiting in the house with medical supplies. She cut away Cole's shirt and examined the wound. "Bullet went clean through. You're lucky. Missed the bone and major vessels. You'll live, but that arm will be weak for months." "Don't need two good arms to see this finished." Cole accepted the whiskey Rosa offered and took a long pull. The pain was beginning to assert itself now, sharp and insistent. "Where's Clayton and Marcus?" "Clayton's still out there," Sarah said from the window. "He's rallying what's left of his men. Maybe 10 of them. Marcus is with him." Cole struggled to his feet, ignoring Rosa's protests. He moved to the window and looked out. Clayton had dismounted and was using an overturned wagon as cover, still firing, still directing his men. The man's arrogance was unbelievable. Even facing certain defeat, he refused to surrender. "This is over," Cole shouted. "Clayton, you've lost. Call it off before more people die." "It's not over until I say it is." Clayton's voice was ragged with rage and disbelief. "That woman is mine. She belongs to the Dalton family. I won't let some nobody take what's ours." "I belong to no one," Sarah called back. "I'm my own person, and you'll never touch me again." Clayton rose from cover, his face twisted with hatred, bringing his rifle to bear on Sarah. Cole tried to move, tried to get between them, but his wounded shoulder betrayed him and he stumbled. The shot rang out. But it wasn't Clayton who'd fired. It was Marcus. The middle Dalton brother stood behind Clayton with a smoking gun, his face empty of expression. Clayton looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest, then back at Marcus with incomprehension. "Why?" Clayton whispered. "Because you're a fool." Marcus's voice was flat, drained. "You started a war we couldn't win. Got Travis killed. Got most of our men killed. All for what? Pride? Some woman who never wanted us?" He dropped his gun. "I'm done. I'm done with all of it." Clayton fell to his knees, then onto his face. He didn't move again. Silence fell over the ranch. The remaining Dalton men, seeing their leader dead and Marcus surrendering, threw down their weapons. Tom Crawford and the other ranchers moved in to secure them, while Diego's men went to help the wounded on both sides. It was over. Cole slumped against the wall, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Sarah was beside him immediately, her hands gentle as she helped him sit. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it. We won." "At a cost." Cole looked at the bodies scattered across the ranch yard. "Too many dead, too much blood. But we're alive, and we're free. That has to count for something." Tom Crawford entered the house, his weathered face grim. "Hell of a fight, Brennan. We heard about what was happening from Miguel when he came through asking for help. Couldn't let the Daltons get away with using the law to cover murder." He looked at Sarah. Ma'am, I'm sorry for what they did to you, for what this whole territory allowed to happen. It's over now, Sarah said. That's what matters. Not quite over. We still need to deal with that bought sheriff and make sure no one tries to claim you two are criminals. Crawford pulled out a badge. I'm actually a territorial marshal. Been investigating the Daltons for months, but couldn't get enough evidence to move against them. Until today. You just gave me everything I need. Witnesses, survivors from Dusty Creek, and a battlefield full of proof that the Daltons were the aggressors. What about Sarah and me? That warrant? Fraudulent. Written on false charges by a corrupt official. I'll see it dismissed. Crawford's expression softened slightly. You two are heroes, whether you feel like it or not. You stood up when no one else would. The territory needs more people like you. Heroes. The word sat strangely on Cole. He'd spent 2 years trying to avoid being a hero, convinced it only got people killed. And maybe it had. There were bodies outside that proved the cost of standing up. But there was Sarah beside him, alive and free. There were the refugees safe in the cellar. There was Jenny and Pete and Diego and all the others who'd found their courage because someone went first. Maybe heroism wasn't about avoiding cost. Maybe it was about deciding some things were worth paying for. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. The wounded were tended. 3 of Cole's men had serious injuries but would live. The dead were counted. 17 Daltons and hired guns, 2 of Cole's defenders. Marcus was taken into custody, strangely cooperative, as if Clayton's death had broken something fundamental in him. The man who'd been so quick to violence seemed hollowed out, going through the motions of existence without real engagement. By afternoon, most of the neighboring ranchers had departed, taking prisoners and carrying news of what had happened. Word would spread fast. The Daltons were finished. Their reign of terror ended. Dusty Creek and the surrounding territory would have to figure out how to live without them. Cole found Sarah on the porch as the sun was setting, her silhouette outlined in gold and red light. She'd changed out of her blood-stained clothes into another borrowed dress from Rosa, and she'd washed the powder smoke from her face. The bruises were still there, fading now from purple to yellow-green, but somehow they seemed less like marks of victimhood and more like badges of survival. "You all right?" Cole asked, easing down beside her. His shoulder throbbed despite Rosa's ministrations. "I killed a man today." Sarah's voice was quiet. "Travis, I shot him and watched him die. I should feel something about that, horror or guilt or something. But all I feel is glad. Glad he's dead. Glad he can't hurt anyone anymore. Does that make me a bad person? No, it makes you human. Travis chose his path. He chose to follow his brothers into violence and cruelty. You just made sure he couldn't continue." Cole paused. "I've killed men before today. More than I'd like to count. And I'll tell you what my father told me when I was young. Taking a life is serious business. You should take it serious. Think about what it means. But you shouldn't let it destroy you, especially when it was in defense of yourself or others. Your father sounds like he was a wise man. He was a drunk and a brute, but even broken clocks are right twice a day." Cole smiled slightly. "My point is, you did what you had to do. Travis would have killed me, then probably you, then anyone else who got in his way. You saved lives today, including mine. That matters more than taking one." Sarah leaned her head against his good shoulder. "What happens now? With us, I mean. We're married, but it was supposed to be temporary, just to get me away from them. Now that the Daltons are gone, now that I'm safe, what are we?" Cole had been asking himself the same question. The marriage had been pragmatic, strategic, a desperate solution to an immediate problem. But somewhere along the way, it had become something more. He cared about Sarah, not out of guilt or obligation, but genuine affection. He admired her strength, her refusal to stay broken, her transformation from victim to warrior. "I don't know," he said honestly. "What do you want us to be?" Sarah was quiet for a long time, watching the sun paint the mountains in shades of fire. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I spent 6 months as John Dalton's wife, and every day of it was hell. I swore I'd never give another man that kind of power over me. Never let myself be vulnerable like that again." Cole's heart sank. "I understand. If you want an annulment, I'm not finished." Sarah turned to look at him. "But then I met you, and you've never once tried to control me. You gave me choices. respected my decisions, taught me to be strong instead of keeping me weak and dependent. You're not like them, Cole. You're not like any man I've ever known. Sarah. So here's what I want. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I want to try, really try. Not a marriage of convenience or desperation, but a real partnership between equals who respect each other, who fight beside each other instead of one protecting and one being protected. Can we do that? Can we be that? Cole looked at this extraordinary woman, bruised but unbroken, scared but brave, transformed by fire into something stronger than she'd ever been. And he realized that somewhere in the chaos of the past week, he'd fallen in love with her. Not the desperate, obsessive love that demanded possession, but the kind that wanted the other person to thrive, to grow, to become their fullest self. Yeah, he said softly, we can be that. If you'll have me, for real this time. For real this time, Sarah agreed. Then she kissed him, gentle and tentative at first, then with growing confidence. It was their first real kiss. The one in Dusty Creek had been a formality, but this was a promise, a beginning. When they pulled apart, Sarah was smiling. It was the first time Cole had seen her truly smile, and it transformed her face completely. We're going to have to rebuild, she said, looking at the ranch. There's a lot of damage, buildings to repair, fences to mend. We've got time. And help. Diego and Rosa, Miguel, the neighbors. We're not alone in this. No, we're not. Sarah squeezed his hand. I like that. Not being alone. Having people who stand with us. They sat together as darkness fell, planning futures and healing wounds, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and somehow made something good from it. Around them, the ranch settled into evening rhythms. Rosa was cooking dinner for everyone, the smell of roasting meat and fresh bread drifting from the kitchen. Miguel was playing guitar somewhere, soft music mixing with conversation. The refugees were emerging from the cellar, reuniting with loved ones, celebrating survival. Diego approached the porch, his face showing exhaustion but also satisfaction. Jefe, señora, we did good today. Many good things. We did. Thank you, Diego, for everything. You and Miguel and Rosa. I couldn't have done this without you. You gave us a reason to fight. That's worth more than money. Diego looked at Sarah. You have become strong, señora, like steel tempered in fire. Your husband is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Sarah said. He gave me back my life. You took it back. He just helped clear the way. Diego smiled. Now Rosa says dinner is ready. Come eat. You've earned it. They gathered in the main house, cramming everyone who could fit around the table and spilling into the yard. There wasn't enough of anything, chairs, plates, food, but they made it work, sharing and laughing and telling stories about the battle. The injured were toasted. The dead were remembered with respect, even the Daltons, because death deserved acknowledgement even when it came to bad men. Pete stood and raised his cup of cider. To Cole Brennan, who showed us what courage looks like, and to Sarah, who proved that the strongest steel comes from the hottest fire. May we all learn from their example. To Cole and Sarah, everyone chorused. Cole felt his face heat with embarrassment, but Sarah gripped his hand under the table and smiled. Get used to it, she whispered. You're a hero, whether you like it or not. We're heroes. Plural. You fought just as hard as I did. Then we're heroes together. I can live with that. The party continued late into the night, people needing to celebrate after the terror and violence of the day. But eventually exhaustion won out, and people drifted off to sleep wherever they could find space. Diego and Rosa returned to their house. Miguel bedded down in the barn to watch over the wounded. The refugees settled in the various outbuildings, already talking about returning to Dusty Creek and rebuilding their lives. Cole and Sarah found themselves alone in the main house, the fire burning low and casting long shadows. Sarah's earlier confidence seemed to have given way to nervousness. I should sleep in this barn, Cole said. Give you privacy. Don't, Sarah took a breath. I'd like you to stay. Not because we have to, just because I don't want to be alone, because I feel safer when you're near. All right, I'll take the floor again. Cole. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. We're married. For real now, remember? We don't have to rush anything, but we also don't have to pretend we're strangers. We can share a bed without it meaning anything more than two people who trust each other wanting comfort. Cole understood what she was offering: companionship without pressure, closeness without demands. It was more than he'd hoped for, and exactly what they both needed. They lay in the darkness side by side, not touching but aware of each other's presence. Outside, the night sounds of the ranch wrapped around them like a blanket. An owl called. The wind sighed through the pines. Dogs patrolled the perimeter, keeping watch. "Cole?" Sarah's voice was drowsy. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for being brave enough to take the chance, for trusting me when you had every reason not to. We saved each other, I think. Both of us were lost before we met. Now maybe we can find our way together." "I'd like that, very much." Sarah's breathing deepened and slowed as sleep claimed her. Cole lay awake longer, his mind processing everything that had happened since he'd walked into that store in Dusty Creek. A week ago, he'd been a man running from his past, hiding from responsibility, convinced that isolation was safety. Now he had a wife, a cause, a purpose. He'd faced his demons and won, not perfectly, not without cost, but won nonetheless. Emma would have approved, he thought. She'd have liked Sarah, would have recognized the same strength under pressure, the same refusal to stay broken. Maybe that's what this had all been about. Not replacing Emma, not trying to rewrite the past, but learning from it. Taking the lessons of failure and using them to do better next time. Cole's last thought before sleep took him was that maybe redemption wasn't a destination. Maybe it was a direction. A commitment to doing better, being better, fighting for what mattered even when the odds were impossible. He'd made that commitment when he paid Sarah's debts. He'd renewed it with every choice since, and he'd keep renewing it, day after day, for as long as he drew breath. Morning came with golden light and birdsong. Cole woke to find Sarah already up, standing at the window and looking out at the ranch. She'd put on the dress she'd worn the day before, and her hair hung loose down her back. In the clean morning light, she looked younger, less burdened. "It's beautiful," she said without turning. "I never noticed before, but this land is beautiful." "It is now that we can appreciate it without waiting for violence." Cole joined her at the window. "What are you thinking about?" "About what comes next. We need to rebuild, repair the damage from the fight. But also, I want to do more. I want to help other women like me. Women trapped with violent men, too scared to leave." She looked at Cole. "Is that foolish to think we could make a difference?" "No. It's the opposite of foolish. It's necessary." Cole took her hand. "We've got space here. We could offer shelter, help people get back on their feet, teach them what you learned, how to fight back, how to be strong. A sanctuary for people who need it." Sarah's eyes lit up with possibility. "We could really do that? We can do anything we set our minds to, together." Over the following weeks, they rebuilt. Not just the burned buildings and damaged fences, but something larger. Word spread about what had happened at the Brennan Ranch, about the woman who'd fought beside her husband, about the community that had stood against tyranny. People came from all over the territory, some to help with reconstruction, others seeking the kind of refuge Sarah had described. The ranch grew and changed. More buildings went up. More families settled nearby, drawn by the promise of a place where bullies didn't rule and strength didn't mean cruelty. Dusty Creek itself transformed, freed from the Daltons' shadow. Pete became mayor. Jenny opened a school. The bought sheriff fled, and Marshall Crawford helped them find an honest lawman. Sarah bloomed like a flower finally given light. The bruises faded, the injuries healed, and the woman beneath emerged fully formed and magnificent. She trained every day with weapons and fighting, becoming genuinely dangerous. But more importantly, she became a teacher, showing other women that strength was possible, that survival could become resistance. Cole watched her with pride and love, this extraordinary person who'd taken tragedy and transformed it into purpose. They worked side by side, building not just a ranch, but a community. Not just a marriage, but a partnership that would last their whole lives. On a cool autumn evening, 6 months after the battle, Cole found Sarah on their porch now, not just his, watching the sun set over mountains dusted with early snow. She was expecting their first child, just barely showing, her hand resting on her belly in unconscious protection. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, settling beside her. "About how far we've come. About how different my life is from what I thought it would be." She leaned against him.
A year ago, I was trapped and terrified, certain I'd die in that house. Now I'm here, free and safe and loved. It seems impossible. Nothing's impossible, just unlikely. But unlikely things happen when people refuse to give up. You saved me, Cole. No, we saved each other. He kissed the top of her head. That's what partners do.
They sat in comfortable silence as darkness gathered. Two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The ranch spread out below them, lights beginning to glow in windows, smoke rising from chimneys, the sounds of people living without fear. This was what they'd fought for. Not just survival, not just freedom from the Daltons, but the right to build something good. To create a place where strength protected instead of exploited, where power served instead of dominated. Sarah Brennan, no longer Calloway, never again a victim, smiled and took her husband's hand. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain and challenging, but no longer frightening. They'd faced the worst and survived. They'd stood against darkness and won. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Partners in survival, companions in building something better. Proof that even in the harshest frontier, courage and compassion could transform everything. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, and on a small ranch that had become something more, a sanctuary, a community, a symbol, two people who'd rewritten their fates sat together and watched the stars emerge one by one, like promises being kept. The story that began with violence and desperation had ended with hope and renewal. The town that learned to look away had learned to stand up. The woman who'd been broken had become unbreakable. The man who'd run from responsibility had found redemption. And in the vast Montana territory, in a world still rough and dangerous, a small light burned against the darkness, a testament to the truth that evil only wins when good people do nothing, and that sometimes doing something is as simple as refusing to look away. Cole and Sarah Brennan had looked. They had seen. And they had acted. And that made all the difference.